Chapter 349. The monster's words made the group of humans feel as if they had been pardoned. They all turned around and ran, as if they were afraid that the monster would go back on its words. After the pursuers scattered, the monster's gaze landed on Lin Yuan. It asked, "Since you know the language of the ancient demon court, it means that you and I are of the same origin. But why do I feel so unfamiliar with your bloodline? Which branch do you belong to?" Lin Yuan was speechless. Suddenly, the air quietened down. In Lin Yuan's previous life, Lin Yuan could have dug up the family tree and talked to the monster. But now the water dragon bloodline in his body was given by the system. There was no clan behind him. How could he belong to any branch? Even if he was sure that the monster and the relic came from the mythical system of his previous life, those legends were still too far away from ordinary people. The so-called scholars had their own opinions. It seemed like there was a complete system, but strictly speaking, there was only a name of the god system. Even the authority of some gods was still being debated. Seeing that Lin Yuan was silent, the monster laughed dryly and said bitterly, "Since you don't want to say, then forget it. Anyway, my brain is getting worse. Even if you tell me, I might not be able to remember. I just thought that I saw the descendant of an old friend. That's why I asked." Lin Yuan's polite smile was a little awkward. He watched as the monster and the relic returned to the depths of the water. Lin Yuan exhaled a long breath of foul air. So, the ancient demon court really existed? Damn it. Lin Yuan was shocked. Although the ancient existences on the Tianwu continent did not appear, it did not mean that they did not exist. Just like the system said, there might not be many true dragons in the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. There might not be many of them, and there might not be any of them at all. Lin Yuan did not doubt that ever since he used the ancient demon court as a banner, some of the ancient powers had already seen him as a thorn in their side. On the other side, Yan Xingqi, who had passed through the door of the secret realm, broke a giant worm that was almost 300 meters long with his halberd. His gaze fell on the broken walls around him, and a look of contemplation appeared in his eyes. This damn place. Why was it randomly teleported? Without a map of this secret realm, there was nothing that could lead the way. Yan Xingqi was like a blind man crossing a river in this secret realm. He had no idea what to do next, or where he should go. Roar, roar, roar. Beast roars could be heard one after another. Yan Xingqi raised his halberd impatiently, his eyes filled with coldness. The demon beasts in this underwater secret realm were like maggots. Even if he slaughtered a large number of them, there would still be a beast king that would gather more demon beasts to kill him. His gaze fell on the demon beasts who were enraged by the death of the beast king. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly, and he said in a cold voice, "A bunch of trash, you can obviously communicate with me, but all of you shut up and chased after me. You really think I have a good temper? Now the hunter and the prey have switched places." Previously, Yan Xingqi had thought of using his cultivation base to quickly patrol around this secret realm. However, Yan Xingqi could faintly sense a dangerous aura coming from several directions. Hence, he had to move very slowly. Along the way, he had slaughtered 2 to 3 demonic beasts. Only then did he meet a fellow who was willing to communicate with him. Now that he had obtained the information he wanted, those demonic beasts who had been chasing after him for a period of time would naturally have to suffer his revenge. The halberd danced and the water currents surged. Countless demon beasts were torn to pieces under Yan Xingqi's slaughter, and a large amount of blood mist spread out. 10 minutes later, Yan Xingqi finished off the last secret realm demon beast with his halberd. Only then did he stop his slaughter. Standing on the spot, he took 2 deep breaths, and the redness on his face faded a little. He sighed and said, "Looks like I am really getting old. Such a small amount of exercise. Even if I were 20 years younger, it would not even be considered a warm-up. Now, I am actually starting to pant. If there are more, I will continue to add more chapters. Now that there are no more chapters, the author is trying his best to write." Chapter 350. 3 days had passed since Lin Yuan recovered from his weakened state. In these 3 days, there were cultivators standing at the edge of this water area every day, looking at Lin Yuan from afar. These people had already offended Lin Yuan. Naturally, they didn't want Lin Yuan to leave this secret realm alive. So every day, they hoped that Lin Yuan would leave this dangerous water area as soon as possible. Even if he didn't want to enter a place that had been explored, he should at least enter another unexplored water area, right? Without that monster as a foreign aid, although Chen Guanshan and Shui Yin weren't easy to deal with, they weren't put in the eyes of the four Heaven Dipper realm experts. Even if there was a certain gap in strength between the two sides, they always had a certain advantage when fighting 4 against 2. It's almost time to end it. A cold light flashed in Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes. Chen Guanshan and Shui Yan, who were meditating, were shocked. Their eyes fell on Lin Yuan at the same time. They didn't have a good time during this period. In order to explore the secret realm, they prepared enough materials. However, Lin Yuan also explained the situation to them later, so they knew what the monster was. Things like becoming a demon were not rare in the Tianwu continent. It was impossible for existences like Shui Yan and Chen Guanshan to not have seen the purgatory beasts. Even if they didn't encounter it, once a purgatory beasts appeared in the nearby area, they would be recruited as a fighting force to participate in the battle. So in their eyes, that monster was an existence that was about to become a purgatory beasts and was still struggling. They were worried these 2 days that the monster couldn't keep its mind and directly became a purgatory beasts. Then it would directly lose its mind and attack them. Originally, the monster's strength was already above them. Once it became a purgatory beasts, its strength would increase by leaps and bounds. At that time, if they joined forces to fight against it, they might end up being killed in an instant. Now that Lin Yuan looked like he had recovered, Chen Guanshan and Shui Yin suddenly became excited. If they continued to stay in this damned place, they might drive themselves crazy first. Carry me to that water area. Lin Yuan and the two of them looked at each other and exhorted softly. At this time, if Lin Yuan continued to go deeper into the waters, the pursuers would certainly not dare to follow him. Moreover, Lin Yuan did not have the courage to explore deeper. This time he encountered a black tortoise that had turned into a demon. There was also a Saraira here to restrain it and prevent it from completely losing its mind. Therefore, this was Lin Yuan's luck. However, something like luck could be used, but one could never rely on it. This was because no one knew if good luck would favor them next time. However, if Lin Yuan were to return to the waters they had explored, there was no way those cultivators wouldn't have guessed that Lin Yuan had already recovered, given how astute those cultivators were. Even though it took half a month for Lin Yuan to recover among the dragon-blooded monsters they had captured in the past, they would still choose to send some airborne realm cultivators to test Lin Yuan out of safety concerns. They might not even show their faces. However, if Shui Yan and Chen Guanshan were to carry Lin Yuan to another unexplored water area, they might still not be able to avoid being tested by the monsters. However, it was certain that all 4 heavenly strength realm cultivators would show up. After all, monsters were very sensitive to their own territories. Lin Yuan had used the language of Earth to communicate with the monster and the Saraira. Naturally, they did not know the specific content. However, judging from Lin Yuan's behavior for the past 2 days, they guessed that the terrifying monster did not intend to let Lin Yuan set foot in its territory. Therefore, at this time, it was completely reasonable for Lin Yuan to take the risk to go through other unknown water areas, and then achieve his goal of staying away from them. Okay. Chen Guanshan and Shui Yin looked at each other, and both of them became alert. As usual, one of them lifted Lin Yuan, and the other carried him by his tail, and strode to another unknown water area. In fact, it could not be said that it was unknown. After Lin Yuan's Eye of God passive effect was activated, he could directly see the situation in that water area. After all, not all monsters had the ability like the black tortoise and the Saraira, who could use their own aura to block the exploration of the Eye of God. Therefore, Lin Yuan was sure that the unexplored water area next door was a dead land. Other than the remains of some monsters, Lin Yuan did not see any life at all. Obviously, it had been abandoned for a long time. However, these sects and forces only wanted to get the treasures in the central palace, and did not want to continue to explore this secret realm. After all, they had not eaten the things in front of them. How could they be in the mood to pile up a more detailed map with their lives? As soon as Lin Yuan moved, the cultivators, who had been eager for a long time, also began to move. In order to hunt down Lin Yuan, they now only had 4 Heavenly Dipper Realm cultivators and 21 Airborne Realm cultivators left. Compared to the hundreds of people when they first entered the secret realm, it could be said that it was very bleak. However, this also made them more determined to kill Lin Yuan here. Otherwise, once Lin Yuan left the secret realm, their losses would be more than what they had now. This was especially true for the major sects and forces. The conflict between the two sides was already on the verge of erupting. It was only because the two sides restrained their temper that they did not directly fight. This time, after falling out with each other, Lin Yuan would make a move on these sects and forces as soon as he left the secret realm. A group of 25 people quickly followed Lin Yuan's group into the new unknown water area. Most of them already had a certain understanding of the rules of this place. Different groups were divided into different territories. Unless it was time to hunt, these monsters would not take half a step out of the minefield. The noon hunting time had just passed. Even if the monster wanted to continue to help Lin Yuan, it would not step out of its own territory. Black Snake, this time you're dead. The Heavenly Dipper Realm cultivator, who had been shouting at Lin Yuan before, secretly clenched his fists. A gloomy look flashed in his eyes. He felt that he had been humiliated in front of Lin Yuan several times in a row. This made him, who came from a superclass sect, resentful of Lin Yuan in his heart. After all, it could be said that he was almost surrounded by thousands of people since he was a child. Even some of the young masters of the big families had to smile and talk to him submissively when they saw him. However, this Black Snake had humiliated him several times in a row, which was tantamount to giving him several loud slaps in the face. Chapter 351. After entering this desolate water area, the group of cultivators trembled in fear. After all, the scene of the monster slaughtering everyone 2 days ago was still vivid in their minds. Now that they had stepped into an unfamiliar water area again, even if everyone present had decent combat strength, they were on high alert at this moment, afraid that another monster would suddenly jump out from the side. However, after walking for 700 to 800 meters, other than the traces left by Lin Yuan and his group on the white sand, they didn't see any traces of living creatures at all. They only saw pieces of decaying beast bones from time to time, as if there had been no life here for a long time. After a moment, someone suddenly exclaimed, "Black Snake!" Only then did everyone recover from their alert state, and they all cast their gazes forward. At this moment, Lin Yuan didn't have the slightest weak posture of being carried by people at all. Instead, he was coiled up and coldly sizing up a group of cultivators with strong fighting spirit. Chen Guanshan crossed his arms in front of his chest and stood on the left side of Lin Yuan. Threads that couldn't be seen by the naked eye were floating around Chen Guanshan, while on the right side of Lin Yuan, there was a cold expression on his face. After taking off his shirt, he revealed the iron rings that covered his arms. Thump! The 4 Heaven Dipper Realm powerhouses walking at the front were shocked at the same time, and they all looked at Lin Yuan with horror in their eyes. This Black Snake has actually recovered. Thinking back to the day when Lin Yuan instantly killed a Heaven Dipper Realm powerhouse who was on the same level as them, these 4 people's faces were filled with horror at the same time. However, soon a Heaven Dipper Realm powerhouse regained his composure and sneered. It's only been 2 days. Even if this Black Snake can really recover from its weakened state, can it still perfectly control its own power? It's deliberately mystifying to scare us away. Oh. Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with a hint of ridicule. In the next moment, a ferocious water dragon had condensed beside Lin Yuan. Seeing that Lin Yuan could really mobilize his own power, the 4 Heaven Dipper Realm cultivators were shocked again. The scene of Lin Yuan instantly killing a Heaven Dipper Realm cultivator was still vivid in their minds. They didn't want to be the unlucky ones. The mockery in Lin Yuan's eyes turned into a sneer as he said with a dark face, "What? This king was able to transform into a flood dragon, thanks to the opportunity that you guys found for him. Now that this king has recovered to his peak state, don't you guys want to come and see how good this king is?" A Heaven Dipper Realm expert's eyes burned with fighting spirit as he growled, "Everyone, things have come to this point. Even if we are willing to take a step back, this black snake will never let us go. We can't escape death anyway. Let's fight. It was as if the surrounding water had received an order from a king. They turned into water swords and rushed towards Lin Yuan. Just this? Lin Yuan's eyes flashed with ridicule. In the next moment, the Water King launched those swords, but they collapsed before they could get close to Lin Yuan. As a water-type monster, Lin Yuan could see at a glance that the other party's method was just a feint. It condensed some water to attack the enemy in an instant. There was no need to guide and control at all. Therefore, even if there was a certain gap between the two sides, Lin Yuan could only temporarily affect the opponent's ability to control water, but Lin Yuan could make it collapse directly. The Heaven Dipper realm expert who controlled water changed his face. He knew that Lin Yuan was a water-type monster, but he didn't expect Lin Yuan's ability to control water to be so strong that his probing attack instantly turned into nothingness. If it was just this, he didn't intend to rely on these methods to test the opponent's strength. However, the moment Lin Yuan made his move, he suddenly felt that the surrounding water spirit power was directly disconnected from him. What kind of absurd thing is this? He, a Heaven Dipper realm water cultivator, actually lost the ability to control water under the water. This black snake is different, eh? The Heaven Dipper realm expert who controlled water just opened his mouth. Another Heaven Dipper realm expert narrowed his eyes slightly and said in a deep voice, "It seems that our Black Water Dragon King has awakened an incredible ability after transforming into a flood dragon. But it doesn't matter, its ability can't be effective forever. You step aside for the time being, I will deal with this black snake." As his voice fell, the Heaven Dipper realm expert's body crackled and thunder surged continuously. His whole person looked like he was wearing a purple battlesuit. Thunder-type cultivator? The expression on Shui Yan's face changed slightly. There were many schools of thought among cultivators. Among them, the 5 elements were the most common. In a place like the Northern Territory, cultivators of the water, wood and earth elements were more common. After all, the cultivation speed of cultivators in different environments would also be different. But aside from the common 5 elements, there were also some rare special elements. For example, the lightning element was known as the element with the most powerful and violent attacks among the special elements. There was a rumor in the northern frontier that the first-rate sect, the Flying Sun Pavilion, had a thunder technique that was passed down from ancient times. Those who weren't talented couldn't cultivate it. But rumors were just rumors. Although the Flying Sun Pavilion didn't refute the rumor, they understood the principle of a tall tree attracting the wind. So the Flying Sun Pavilion had never revealed any traces of thunder technique. It was only until now that the Heaven Dipper realm expert from the Flying Sun Pavilion revealed his thunder technique. In the blink of an eye, the Heaven Dipper realm expert from the Flying Sun Pavilion had already rushed over. His fists were wrapped in lightning as he went straight for Lin Yuan's face. The surging electric current hit his face, and even Lin Yuan felt suffocated. "Tut!" Another Heaven Dipper realm cultivator growled. A milky white sound wave actually appeared, and went straight for Lin Yuan's back. In the blink of an eye, Lin Yuan fell into a situation where he was attacked from the front and back after defeating the Heaven Dipper realm expert, who could control water. Chen Guanshan and Shui Yan's expressions changed slightly. They moved almost at the same time, wanting to block one side for Lin Yuan. However, the airborne realm cultivators around them also moved quickly and surrounded the two. The Heaven Dipper realm expert who could control water was right. Things had already come to this point. Even if they were willing to let Lin Yuan go now, once Lin Yuan left this secret realm, he wouldn't let them and the forces behind them go. Therefore, from the moment they decided to stand in a team, only one side could survive between them and Lin Yuan. Therefore, there was no reason for them to retreat now that they had started fighting. Even if they didn't have the guts to fight Lin Yuan, they wouldn't let Chen Guanshan and Shui Yan interfere in the matter of 4 Heaven Dipper realm experts surrounding Lin Yuan. "Keep moving forward if you don't want to die." Chen Guanshan's eyes were red. He didn't hold back at all with the scimitar in his hand, which was his trump card. He directly plunged it into the crowd and instantly killed 8 late-stage airborne realm cultivators. Chapter 352. Seeing how Chen Guanshan looked like a madman, the airborne realm cultivators who rushed up looked at each other. For a moment they were actually intimidated by Chen Guanshan's aura. However, they did not directly rush up. These airborne realm cultivators still surrounded Chen Guanshan and Shui Yan. They knew very well that while Chen Guanshan's scimitar was terrifying, he was only able to use it twice when he was at his peak. After that, Chen Guanshan's aura would become unstable. Even if he still had the strength to fight with them, he would not be able to kill them all in an instant. Kill. Chen Guanshan's attack did not scare off those airborne realm cultivators, but Shui Yan quickly growled and took the initiative to rush forward. Both of his hands abruptly lashed out at the same time. It took only an instant for 6 airborne realm cultivators to be sent flying by Shui Yan's terrifying strength. 2 of them were even crushed into meat paste on the spot. Both of them did not hold back at all. They even used their trump cards as soon as they came up. Even if they were to face a group of cultivators who were half a step into the Heavenly Dipper realm, they were confident that they could kill or severely injure the other party. Shui Yan, you are also a member of a clan in the northern frontier. Do you think that this black snake is now attacking our sects and forces, and when it defeats us later, you people of the clans and families will end up well? Yes, this black snake is very ambitious. Although it is treating the clans well now, the black snake obviously wants it to be the only voice in the northern frontier. When our sects and forces are suppressed, you people of the clans and families will definitely not be able to get any benefits. Lord Shui, you are a member of the northern frontier, so I hope that you will stand on our side. When this black snake was not around, everyone was doing well. Although I do not deny that the appearance of the black snake has indeed made the northern frontier prosperous, don't be fooled by appearances. The black snake is just trying to divide us and defeat the sects and clans one by one. Voices of persuasion were heard. While those airborne realm cultivators were no match for Shui Yan and Chen Guanshan, they had nowhere else to run. If Chen Guanshan, who was suspected to be the Shuangjian barbarian, was the only one present, they would have been able to hold their own for a bit. However, as soon as Shui Yan, who was the successor of the Ma army, got involved in the battle, the scales of victory would have tipped right away. Even if all of them were to die, they would have only been able to delay those 2 for a bit. No one wanted to die. If they wanted to die, they wouldn't have participated in this incident. At first, they only thought that exploring the secret territory was a good opportunity to improve themselves. However, no one thought that this matter was set up by some people from the beginning to the end. They also didn't expect that the battle between Lin Yuan and the sects would directly break out in the secret territory. They didn't even have the chance to choose. They were forced to stand on the side of the sects and become enemies with Lin Yuan. Now it was too late to regret. Master Shui, I've heard a lot about you. I've long wanted to meet you, a piece of trash. The Heavenly Dipper realm powerhouse who could control water entered with a strong force. His eyes fell on Shui Yan's face without restraint. He sneered and said, as a level 4 Heavenly Dipper realm cultivator, you can't even support a small family. So, it shouldn't be a problem for me to call you trash, right? Shui Yan glanced coldly at the Heavenly Dipper realm powerhouse who could control water and said expressionlessly, Li Chong, I still remember the scene when you knelt at the door of my Shui family and begged me to give you a meal. You're just a villain who got what he wanted. Li Chong snorted coldly and stepped forward. He pulled out the sword at his waist with a backhand. The cold blade was raised and directly slashed at Shui Yan's face. Shui Yan didn't dodge. He directly raised his arms to affect the other party. For a moment, the shadows of the sword and the fist almost shrouded the 2 figures. It was almost impossible to tell who was leading the attack. Chen Guanshan gently exhaled. When his eyes fell on the other Heavenly Dipper realm powerhouse who didn't participate in the siege of Lin Yuan, he put his right hand on his chest and made a strange bow. He said in a deep voice, Senior Su Chen Guanshan the Jinx pays his respects. He, well said, well said. Senior Su was an old man who was missing his front teeth. His skin looked drier and more wrinkled than the bark of a tree. There was no sword hanging at his waist, but a golden pipe. If he wasn't famous in the northern frontier, and was once known as a poison master, ordinary people would only think of him as an old farmer who was obsessed with mulberry fields. Similarly, very few people knew that Senior Su and Chen Guanshan came from the same sect. That organization, which was similar to the embroidered uniform guard, would cultivate a group of terrifying assassins almost every 10 years. For example, Chen Guanshan's sect was good at hidden weapons and controlling objects. Another sect that was equally famous specialized in the art of poison. They could take a person's life from thousands of miles away in a day. Senior Su took the pipe from his waist and gently took a puff. With an intoxicated expression, he said, "It's not easy to master the 1,000 silk twists. In my generation, there were only 5 people who were able to master the 1,000 silk twists. For you to be able to master the 1,000 silk twists, you don't lack talent or fortune. It would be a pity if you died here." At this point, Senior Su paused. He squinted his eyes and smiled. "Seeing that we are from the same sect, if you surrender now and help us deal with this black snake, I can spare your life. How about it?" Chen Guanshan didn't say anything. He just frowned with a thoughtful look in his eyes. Although they were from the same sect, he knew nothing about the poison cultivator's methods. He didn't even know what methods the poison cultivator would use to attack him. He was even worried that the poison cultivator had already poisoned him in the time it took for him to speak. What a pity, what a pity. Senior Su put down the pipe in his hand and shook his head gently. A look of regret flashed across his face. However, after feeling regretful, Senior Su suddenly opened his mouth. A mouthful of thick purple smoke came out of his mouth, and instantly spread in the direction where Chen Guanshan was. Along the way, 2 airborne realm cultivators couldn't dodge in time, and immediately knelt on the ground with their hands on their throats. In just 2 breaths, they died on the spot. There was a big difference between the half-step Celestial Star Border Realm and the Celestial Star Border Realm. Moreover, the few Celestial Star Border Realm cultivators who were making a move here were not the top of the Celestial Star Border Realm. Once they went all out, the so-called half-step Celestial Star Border Realm cultivators were no match for them. Chen Guanshan's eyes twitched. He tapped on the ground with the tip of his foot, and suddenly retreated. He didn't want to see if that cloud of poisonous smoke could kill him like how it killed those airborne realm cultivators. Senior Su was still smoking his pipe from time to time. It was as if he was not worried about Chen Guanshan being able to dodge his attack at all. He looked like he was just watching a show. Chapter 353. Black Snake, none of your helpers will be able to come. Lei Xiu said mockingly as he waved his fist at Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan wasn't in a hurry to fight back. He just kept dodging under the opponent's stormy attacks. When he couldn't dodge anymore, he would control the water dragon behind him to block. It was as if he was firmly suppressed by the opponent's attacks. Even fighting back became a problem. Lei Xiu waved his fist and sneered. "I knew it. Black Snake, you haven't left the weak state at all. You're just pretending now. Do you think we can suffer the same loss twice? This time if you..." Before Lei Xiu finished his words, he lowered his head in disbelief and stared blankly at the dragon tail that pierced through his chest. "Let me teach you a lesson. You can use it in your next life." Lin Yuan, who succeeded in one hit, sneered and said in a deep voice, "In your next life, when your opponent keeps dodging your attacks, you have to be careful, because the opponent may not be suppressed by you to the point that he can't fight back. Instead, he's constantly adapting to your attack rhythm. Once the time is right, your opponent will quickly reveal his fangs and finish you off." Lei Xiu wasn't a cultivator of the thwart cultivation method. He just relied on his speed and the protection of the thunder armor, so he was arrogant enough to fight Lin Yuan in close combat. However, with Lin Yuan's current attack power, he really didn't care about the defensive power of the thunder armor. It was just that if he attacked rashly, he would be blocked by Lei Xiu. Now that he was attacked from the front and back, Lin Yuan didn't have the intention to fight slowly with Lei Xiu. Instead, he had been looking for an opportunity to kill him in one blow. Just now, under the continuous attacks, Lei Xiu quietly took a breath, causing the storm-like attacks to be interrupted. This allowed Lin Yuan to seize the fleeting opportunity to directly erase his existence. At this time, the sound waves from the Heaven Dipper Realm expert had already arrived behind Lin Yuan. Seeing the sudden death of the Thunder Cultivator, the Heaven Dipper Realm powerhouse did not have much emotion on his face. as if everything was within his expectations. Seeing that Lin Yuan still did not dodge, there was even a sneer on his face. It seemed that Lin Yuan's behavior, in his opinion, was simply courting death. However, Lin Yuan didn't think so. First of all, Lin Yuan's defense was as high as 600 points. Coupled with the 65% damage reduction from the max-level Golden Body secret art, it was almost enough to make him immune to most of the damage. At the very least, damage that was enough to kill a Mountain Lord realm monster in the eyes of others would only cause light or serious injuries to Lin Yuan at most. Of course, if Lin Yuan were to take on a terrifying killing move like the Fire Kirin's Doomsday Meteor, he would still die on the spot. After all, that kind of damage had already exceeded the limit of what Lin Yuan could withstand. However, how could a mere Heaven Dipper Realm Level 3 cultivator compare to the means used by a Desolate Demon Realm expert? The milky white sound waves landed heavily on Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan staggered from the impact, and some of the scales on his body instantly shattered. However, this degree of injury was nothing to Lin Yuan. After experiencing the pain of his physical body transforming into a flood dragon, this sound wave wasn't even qualified to make Lin Yuan feel pain. That's it. Lin Yuan turned around and tilted his head at the Heaven Dipper Realm expert, who roared out the sound wave. A hint of mockery flashed in his heterochromatic eyes. This Heaven Dipper Realm expert clearly didn't expect Lin Yuan to not die on the spot after taking on his strongest move head-on. If that was all, it wouldn't be a big deal. After all, Lin Yuan was now a terrifying existence that could instantly kill a Heaven Dipper Realm Level 2 cultivator. Putting aside his attack power, his ridiculous defense power was nothing much. However, now that this scene appeared before his eyes, this Heaven Dipper Realm expert only wanted to curse. How was this F*King ridiculous? This was F*King fantasy. His strongest move landed squarely on Lin Yuan's body, but Lin Yuan didn't seem to feel it at all. It was as if his full-strength punch had directly hit cotton. Subconsciously, this Heaven Dipper Realm cultivator wanted to escape. Although he was a disciple of a sect, the sect behind him was different. The sect behind him had a Void Realm expert. If Black Snake wanted to touch the sect behind him, he would have to consider whether he had the ability to do so. However, the moment this Heaven Dipper Realm expert turned around, he suddenly saw a clear and transparent water dragon looking down at him. Although that ferocious face was made of water, it still brought a deep sense of fear to this Heaven Dipper Realm expert. Black Snake, my master is Master Qing Ming. He's one of the few Void Realm experts in the northern frontier. If you kill me, my master will never let you go. Most people would panic when they encountered danger, but there were also some people who would become calmer and even think of solutions that they couldn't normally think of. This Heaven Dipper Realm expert was clearly this kind of person. He was very clear that his relationship with Black Snake had reached a point where only one of them would die. As the person who took the lead in scheming against Black Snake, even if Black Snake let everyone go, it wouldn't let him go. Therefore, he knew that begging for mercy wouldn't have any effect. Master Qing Ming? Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. Although he didn't make any movements, the image of the angry dragon that could instantly kill the powerhouse of the Kongming realm stopped in an instant. It just maintained the posture of staring at the powerhouse of the Heavenly Dipper realm. Black Snake, although I don't want to admit it, you are a powerful person. Therefore, you should know that there are no eternal enemies in this world, only eternal benefits. I can join hands with these people to harm you for the spiritual item in the Central Palace. Then, I can become your staunch ally for other benefits. This matter is my fault and I admit it. As long as you state a price, I will definitely not frown. Perhaps we will have a chance to cooperate in the future. Seeing that Lin Yuan was really intimidated by Master Qing Ming's name, the Heaven Dipper Realm expert immediately added with a smile. His expression gradually relaxed. Lin Yuan was secretly thinking, although the existence of the Kongming realm and the Desolate Demon realm or above, according to the unspoken rules of the Tianwu continent, they are not allowed to intervene in the war without the strength of the same level. On Lin Yuan's side, whether it is the Northern Region Lord's Mansion or the Blackwater Dragon Palace, there is no existence that can compete with the Kongming realm. so he can use this rule to protect himself. However, there was always a limit to everything. In the face of life and death, these people didn't care about rules. Chapter 354. Speaking of which, this unspoken rule was applicable during peacetime. Now that the Shangwu dynasty was so chaotic and the northern frontier had fallen into Lin Yuan's hands, who knew how many people were eyeing Lin Yuan's terrifying benefits? If Lin Yuan forced these cultivators into a corner, he would definitely not have a good ending. It was even possible that he would be directly killed by a Void Realm cultivator. For these sects with Kongming Realm in charge, Lin Yuan's initial intention was not to uproot them, but to expel this level of sects from the northern region. He was not arrogant enough to think that he was invincible, so after the Heavenly Dipper Realm powerhouse mentioned his master, Lin Yuan seemed a little hesitant. There were ways to expel them. For the current Lin Yuan, the best way to expel these sects with Void Realm cultivators was to deal with them coldly. After all, the matter of weakening the sects and clans had already been decided. These benefits snatched from the mouths of these clans and sects would ultimately become the benefits of the Northern Frontier Academy. When these sects and clans felt that they had no benefits in the Northern Frontier, and would grow weaker day by day, even unable to recruit disciples, they would naturally move to other places to take root. It's just a fake Taoist. Can his name be used to scare people? In the distance, a middle-aged man in silver armor strode over. His majestic gait and the bloody aura radiating from his body immediately caused Lin Yuan's pupils to contract. Shock appeared in his eyes. Insulting my master. I think you're courting death. The Heaven Dipper Realm powerhouse had just used his master to suppress Lin Yuan. And now was the time when he was at his most inflated. He just heard the voice behind him, and did not look back to see who was talking behind him. He directly opened his mouth and roared. But soon he saw traces of ridicule in Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes. It seemed that his words were not appropriate, but he could not think of any problem with his words. After all, Master Qing Ming was one of the few Void Realm cultivators on the northern frontier. Even Hu Yan and the others in the past had to respectfully greet his master when they saw him. The person who spoke. Thinking of this, the strong man of Heavengang Realm slowly turned around and saw the figure in silver armor. His pupils shrank to the size of a needle and he exclaimed, Yen! Yen! There weren't many Kongming Realm cultivators in the northern frontier, but strictly speaking, there were still a few of them. Among them, the guardian of the northern frontier, Yen Xingqi was the strongest, followed by Freedom Courtyard's Master Qin. Then there were Master Qing Ming, Old Demon Bloodseed, and Fairy Qin Se. These three experts each oversaw a region. Below them were some Tom, Dick and Harry. They were a bunch of old farts who were stuck at the peak of the Heaven Dipper Realm. They relied on their low cultivation to compete with those weaker than them. Any sect that didn't have a Kongming Realm cultivator would be bullied by these old farts. However, when they saw the existence of these 5 Heaven Dipper Realm cultivators, they all behaved like obedient dogs. He was now admiring his own courage. After all, in the entire northern frontier, the number of people who dared to say that Yen Xingqi was courting death could be counted with one's fingers. Even if his master was here personally, he might not have the guts to shout at Yen Xingqi. Right now, he felt like his head was buzzing and his mind was completely blank. Yen Xingqi strode in front of He Shi and directly passed by this Heaven Realm cultivator. He crossed his arms and looked at He Shi with a scrutinizing gaze. He said in a deep voice, He Shi, I'm very curious. What are you trying to do by making such a big commotion in the northern region? After being questioned by Yen Xingqi, Lin Yuan was stunned. He had thought that Yen Xingqi could be the reinforcements that Lei Fan had invited. He had also thought that Yen Xingqi was planning to take advantage of this opportunity to kill him, the demonic beast that was causing trouble in the northern frontier, and use this opportunity to liberate the northern frontier and bring the northern frontier back under the control of mankind. However, he had never thought that Yen Xingqi would actually ask him about his plans for the future with such a serious face. These aristocratic families and sects in the northern frontier are like leeches that cling onto the northern frontier. Every year, they siphon off huge amounts of benefits from the northern frontier. Every time they consume resources, It is the blood and sweat of countless citizens of the northern frontier. I don't care about the past, but now that the northern frontier is under my rule, it is impossible for them to continue doing such things. Furthermore, these aristocratic families and sects have exploited the citizens of the northern frontier for so many years. Now that I am making them bleed, and it is also beneficial to the northern frontier, this isn't too much, right? Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and said in a low voice. Yan Xingqi pondered for a moment, then laughed lightly and said, "What if they are not willing?" Although Yan Xingqi was the guardian of the northern frontier, he did not have a wife or children, and did not have any family ties. Therefore, he was not within Lin Yuan's scope of attack. However, he was very interested in Lin Yuan's way of thinking. After all, even a powerful sovereign king like Lei Qiuxing would not dare to offend the aristocratic families and sections. Since ancient times, there had been many sovereigns who had died in strange ways, almost all because they had interfered with the interests of the aristocratic families and sections. Since ancient times, it had always been the aristocratic families and sects that stepped on the heads of the citizens, sucking the blood of the citizens, and forcing the citizens to worship them as gods. They would be proud if their children could become disciples of the sects or become members of the aristocratic families. While they were envious of the aristocratic families and sects for having such rich resources, they never seemed to realize that such a huge amount of wealth had actually flowed out from their hands. Of course, they could not be biased. The existence of the aristocratic families and sects was not completely a disadvantage. When faced with evil forces like the demonic beasts and heretic cultivators, there were many places where the local government could not take care of everything. Basically, it was the local aristocratic families and sects that protected the citizens. Therefore, there was no need to fight against the smaller aristocratic families and sections. However, if it was the larger aristocratic families and sects, it would be a headache for the 7 dynasties, as it was hard to say if they could win or not. However, in the northern frontier, Lin Yuan did not need to worry about this problem. Firstly, there were the demonic beasts in the Hengduan mountain range. Although they did not have a good relationship with Lin Yuan, they would receive a large amount of spiritual items from Lin Yuan every month as dividends. It was not a problem for them to restrain their subordinates and not disturb the citizens. In addition, the plans for the northern frontier's census and identity verification were already on the right track. Apart from the spies that the major forces had scattered in the northern frontier, Lin Yuan could guarantee that in the future, even the secret agents of the 7 dynasties would not be able to move freely in the northern frontier, let alone heretic cultivators. In such an environment, the benefits of the aristocratic families and sects were next to nothing. They would even drag down the Northern Frontier Academy that Lin Yuan had established. It was even to the extent that both sides wanted to strangle each other to ensure that their interests would not be shaken. This was the real reason why both sides had shed all pretense of cordiality. Chapter 355. I will definitely eradicate the forces of the sections. With the existence of the academy, the people of the northern region will no longer need to pay such a huge price to cultivate. After taking away the students, the major sects will definitely be short of manpower. Therefore, before we have a falling out, I have to directly destroy the sects of the northern region. Otherwise, they might not dare to take revenge on me. However, it will be too easy for me to make a move on the instructors and students of the academy to intimidate the commoners who want to enter the academy. As for the aristocratic families, I will set new rules for them. Of course, while depriving them of some privileges, I will ensure that they can earn enough to support their families. However, after I take over the northern frontier, I do not wish for the orders of the northern frontier prince's mansion to remain unissued. I also do not wish for there to be any dissenting voices in the northern frontier. If there is a problem with my way of thinking, we can discuss and solve it. I have no objections. However, if there is a voice that exists purely to oppose me or to obtain privileges for some people, I only have one attitude: kill. Lin Yuan narrowed his eyes and said slowly, Yan Xingqi, no matter what you think, what I want to say is that a new era has begun in the northern frontier. Even if I fail, there will be a day when someone will succeed me. Anyone who opposes the era will only end up being crushed by the current of the era. When Yan Xingqi first appeared here, Lin Yuan did not know what Yan Xingqi wanted to do. However, when Yan Xingqi saw him, the first thing he asked was what he wanted to do. With such a straightforward way of speaking, if Lin Yuan could not guess what Yan Xingqi was thinking, then he deserved to die here today. Even though Lin Yuan spoke with an indifferent attitude, his heart was filled with eagerness. After all, having a Void Nether Realm expert in the northern frontier was completely different from having a group of desolate demon realm monsters supporting Lin Yuan in the Hengduan Mountains. If Lin Yuan suddenly died in the northern frontier, the demonic beasts of the Hengduan mountain range would at most organize a beast tide to take revenge on these humans. However, if both sides really went to war, even if the other 6 dynasties were willing to see the Shenwu dynasty fall, they would not be willing to see the Shenwu dynasty's territory be occupied by the demonic beasts. At that time, the 7 dynasties might even join forces to attack the Hengduan mountain range. Therefore, although the demonic beast's strength seemed powerful, they were indeed unreliable. But if Lin Yuan had a Void Realm cultivator behind him, that would be a different story. Especially when the one supporting Lin Yuan was Yan Xingqi, the publicly acknowledged strongest cultivator in the northern frontier. If Yan Xingqi wanted to take revenge on a certain faction, that faction might not be able to withstand it. Yan Xingqi stroked his chin and smiled. Interesting. I'm suddenly interested in the new era that you mentioned. How about it, Blackwater Dragon King? Do you want to bring me to see what the new era looks like? When Yan Xingqi's voice fell, the faces of most of the people present turned gloomy. Today, Lin Yuan had used his actions to prove that he could kill a Heaven Star Border Realm level 4 cultivator like killing a dog. If he joined forces with Yan Xingqi, the sects in the northern frontier would definitely be wiped out and expelled if they did not quickly unite. Most importantly, they did not even know if they could make it out of the secret realm alive. It was impossible for them to spread this important news to their respective sections. Shui Yan's face was gloomy at first, but he quickly adjusted his state of mind. This was because Lin Yuan said that he would set new rules for the aristocratic families instead of uprooting the aristocratic families. He would also ensure that the aristocratic families would gain enough benefits from the new rules. In addition, Lin Yuan's promise to him was like a tranquilizer. Invisibly, a murderous aura spread out in the air. Other than Shui Yan and Chen Guanshan, everyone present had a look of despair. At the same time, Lei Qiusheng, who was standing by the shore, squinted his eyes and said in a deep voice, "It's about time. The 1st and 2nd battalions will stay behind to keep watch. Once there are any cultivators coming out of the secret realm or approaching from other areas, take them down immediately. The rest of you follow me." Luo Su, who was wrapped in bandages, was slightly taken aback. His eyes revealed a look of confusion as he asked, "Isn't it too early to make a move on the sects? Are you so sure that the Black Snake will reach an agreement with Yan Xingqi? Aren't you afraid that Yan Xingqi will kill the Black Snake and help the sects in the northern frontier to wipe us out? If the Black Snake can't even deal with Yan Xingqi, the Demon Emperor Association would have changed hands long ago." Lei Fan's lips curled up as he laughed coldly and continued. "Furthermore, attack us? Yan Xingqi has stayed in the northern frontier for so many years, and he can't bear to see the northern frontier in a bad state. Our existence has brought changes to the northern frontier, and that is why Yan Xingqi has appeared here. Don't be fooled by his cold face. In his heart, he hopes that we will continue to exist and carry out the orders in his hands." Speaking up to this point, Lei Fan paused for a moment and the smile on his face deepened. "Besides, what right does he have to wipe us out? The northern frontier has more than 600,000 guards. Others may not know what we are doing, but do you think they don't know? Even if it's not for the northern frontier for themselves, they will stand firmly on our side. No matter how strong Yan Xingqi is, can he kill 600,000 people? But the sects..." Luo Su opened his mouth again, a look of worry flashing past his eyes. As someone who had spent most of his life in the northern frontier, he was very clear about the morals and power of the sects in the northern frontier. So on the matter of falling out with the sects in the northern frontier, Luo Su had always maintained a conservative attitude. The past is the past, and the present is the present. In the past, if we were to collapse, the Shimwu dynasty would immediately send a new team to take over the northern frontier. But after seeing the huge profits of the northern frontier, everyone in the Shimwu dynasty, including that man, wants to take over the northern frontier. Coupled with the tense situation in various places, the Shimwu dynasty is unable to gather enough people. If the Shimwu dynasty is unable to gather enough people, the sects and families in the northern frontier will have their own ideas. By then, the northern frontier will turn from the prosperous scene it is today into a state of seclusion and war between the various powers. Do you think the Shimwu dynasty is willing to see such a scene? Is Yan Xingqi willing to see such a scene? Don't tell me, what happened to Ma Jun that year will happen again? The smile on Lei Fan's face grew wider and wider, to the point that his smile was somewhat sinister as he said coldly, "Once I fall, the northern frontier will immediately descend into chaos. Even if Yan Xingqi has taken care of the Black Snake, he will still stand on our side. If we follow the Black Snake's plan, we will be the winners." Chapter 356. After receiving the order from the lake in the mystic realm, Hu Yan and the others changed into their armors and began to mobilize the various forces scattered around the northern frontier, such as the Guardian Corps and the Council of the Demon Emperor. After defeating Xiong Wujuan last time, the guards of the northern region had not been used for a long time. First, it was because Lin Yuan had brought a strong economic support to the northern region. Almost everyone intended to take advantage of this opportunity to make a good profit. Not many people intended to cause trouble at this time. Second, it was because the structure of the northern region seemed to be stable, but in fact the secret agents of the sects, aristocratic families, and even the major dynasties were lurking in the northern region, waiting for Lin Yuan to make a mistake. Therefore, all parties were secretly wrestling, but no one would put the struggle on the surface. Today, this legendary army that defeated 5 times their number with 600,000 people once again showed its fangs. In just 4 hours, a third of the hundreds of sects in the northern frontier had been wiped out. At first, the Northern Frontier Guardian Corps still used the excuse of assisting in the investigation. However, after encountering the sect's disciples several times, the officers at the bottom were no longer willing to bet the lives of their subordinates on whether the other party would surrender or not. All the sects and forces that were listed on the elimination list were directly killed without even a chance to talk. At first, there were still some sects and forces that were strong enough that even the Northern Frontier Guardian Corps could not do anything to them. However, their resistance was useless. If they were targeted by a certain dynasty or a stronger force, perhaps they would have gritted their teeth and let this tough bone go. However, this was the Northern Frontier, and their enemy was the Beast King who controlled the northern frontier, and was even conferred as a god by the Shimwu dynasty. Those sects and forces that defeated the Northern Frontier Guardian Corps did not even have time to catch their breath before they heard a series of thunderous footsteps. Those were the footsteps of a beast tide that could shake the earth and mountains when the number of beasts reached a certain scale. The sects and forces that hadn't been attacked by the Northern Frontier Guard Corps were also on tenterhooks. Most of them didn't even know what was going on. They were all trembling and began to send the old, weak, women, and children to the escape routes that they had prepared in advance. If Lin Yuan was in charge of this operation, Lin Yuan would have just raised his hand and let these old, weak, women, and children go. As for nurturing a tiger and inviting calamity, he couldn't wait for a strong enemy to come and give him attribute points. Even if the enemy was a genius, they would have to obediently kneel down and submit to him. In terms of growth speed alone, Lin Yuan didn't believe that there was a creature in this world that could be faster than him. If there was, then it should also be a cheat-like existence. However, the one who was in charge of the cleanup operation this time was not Lin Yuan, but the one who had been lying low in the Northern Frontier Duke's palace all this while. Other than having the title of Duke of the Northern Frontier, Lei Fan, whose real power was not even comparable to the other 6 city lords. Once a venomous snake coiled its body and launched an attack, even a hunter who had dealt with venomous snakes all year round would be caught off guard and bitten fiercely. The petty tricks of those sects did not escape the eyes of the Association of Demon Emperors at all. Therefore, before they reached a safe place, They were intercepted and killed by a group of cultivators in black capes and devil masks. Not to mention the young disciples who were regarded as the seeds of revival by the sects in the future. Even the real old, weak women and children could not win the slightest sympathy in front of the criminals and demi-humans of the Association of Demon Emperors. They were all killed without any hesitation. After the corpses were beheaded, they directly piled up in front of their respective sects' mountain gates, as if to announce that those who went against Lin Yuan would end up in such a miserable state. At the same time, in the Flying Sun Pavilion, a first-rate sect in the northern frontier. Preposterous, preposterous. Sect Master Miao Chun paced back and forth in the meeting hall. The expression on his face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. After the mystic realm opened, various powers had sent people into the mystic realm. Even the famous Black Snake couldn't resist the temptation of the mystic realm. As one of the first-rate sects who had been secretly controlling the mystic realm for many years, the Flying Sun Pavilion had even sent a candidate for the next sect master, hoping to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Lin Yuan. The other sects were the same. After all, the mystic realm was a place that couldn't be connected to the outside world, and was extremely dangerous to those who didn't know the situation in the mystic realm. Even if a similar place appeared, there might not be enough water-type spirit items to attract the Black Snake. This was the best opportunity to get rid of the Black Snake. Once the Black Snake died, they would throw the blame to the mystic realm's demonic beasts, and the northern frontier's Wang residents could only swallow their anger. Without the Black Snake's protection, the northern frontier's Wang residents was nothing in the eyes of the other sections. But what Miao Chun didn't expect was that before he received any news, Lei Fan's side had already dared to send out troops to wipe out the various sections. This action seemed to be shedding all pretense of cordiality, but at the same time, it was also sending out a signal. In fact, there wasn't anything good in the mystic realm. The real spirit items were all in the palace in the middle of the mystic realm. Those who didn't have the blood of the dragon race wouldn't be able to enter the palace. Therefore, other than those rogue cultivators, rather than saying that the other sects had entered the mystic realm to search for treasures, it was more accurate to say that each of them had their own ulterior motives. They all wanted to reap some benefits from the battle between Lin Yuan and the other sections. But with Lei Fan's actions, it was needless to say who would emerge victorious in the mystic realm. With regards to the actions of the northern frontier's Wang residents, the Flying Sun Pavilion wasn't worried at all. Although the northern frontier's guard army was fierce, they were only targeting the third-rate and second-rate sections. Even the higher-level sects in the second-rate sects weren't something that the northern frontier's Wang residents could touch, let alone a first-rate sect like the Flying Sun Pavilion. The only thing that made Miao Chun's heart ache was that the Lei Xiao who was sent into the mystic realm was already the most outstanding disciple that the Flying Sun Pavilion had recruited in the past 30 years. Furthermore, he had grown up in the Flying Sun Pavilion. His parents were just commoners, and he didn't have any powerful backing behind him. It could be said that he was the best candidate to inherit the Flying Sun Pavilion. And yet, he had died in the mystic realm just like that. Black Snake, you and I cannot live under the same sky. Miao Chun fiercely pushed out his palm, and the strong wind instantly turned the furniture and antiques into dust. Only then did he walk out of his courtyard with his hands behind his back with a ferocious look on his face. Facing the group of consecrators and elders who were already waiting outside, he said, "Although there are many sects in the northern frontier who don't usually get along well with each other, we have always been united when fighting against external enemies. This time, when the smaller sects are in trouble, it will not look good for us, the bigger sections. All of you will lead your men to assist those smaller sects and bring them under the jurisdiction of the Flying Sun Pavilion for protection. What if the people from the northern frontier's Wang residents stop us?" One of the consecrators cupped his hands and asked. Chapter 357. Kill. I'd like to see if this Black Snake has the guts to come and settle the score with me. Miao Chun narrowed his eyes without any hesitation. He didn't care about the northern frontier prince's mansion at all. In Miao Chun's opinion, as long as he left the Black Snake, the prince's mansion at the northern frontier prince's mansion would be a paper tiger that couldn't even withstand a single blow. They wouldn't even be as powerful as a second-rate sect. Although they weren't on the brink of destruction, they weren't much of a threat. There's no need for the Demon Emperor to personally settle the score with you. A calm voice suddenly rang out from the crowd outside the Beiyan mansion. Miao Chun instinctively frowned and looked in the direction of the voice. Immediately, he saw a bearded old man in a tattered white robe leaning on a sword. He held a vermilion gourd in his hand, and poured wine into his mouth from time to time. Peak of the Heaven's Starborder Realm. Miao Chun narrowed his eyes slightly, and looked past the old man's appearance to see the most dangerous side of him. He didn't know how this person managed to sneak into the group of consecrators and elders of the Flying Sun Pavilion, but in terms of cultivation, he wasn't any weaker than him. In addition, he was surrounded by a group of Heaven's Starborder Realm experts, yet he was still able to maintain his composure. He was probably an existence that had walked very far on the path of the Heaven's Starborder Realm. Although he wasn't able to knock open the gate of heaven and enter the Kongming realm, he was probably much stronger than ordinary Heaven's Starborder Realm cultivators. You are. Miao Chun guessed that the other party was at least an expert of the same level as him. Naturally, he didn't have the arrogance of someone who controlled a first-rate sect. Even his gloomy face looked much better. Demon Emperor's Association, Wine Sword Mystery. The old man drank the last mouthful of wine in the gourd and narrowed his eyes. He stood up from his original position and walked towards Miao Chun. He even said slowly, "Under the orders of the Demon Emperor Council, I am here to take Miao Chun's head. From today onwards, the Flying Sun Pavilion will no longer exist in the northern frontier." Although the king residences in the northern frontier couldn't touch the sects and factions, it didn't mean that the Association of the Demon Emperor couldn't do the same. Although the Association of the Demon Emperor was a force of the pugilistic world, no one could deny the growing influence of the Association of the Demon Emperor in the Sky Martial continent. Lei Fan had spent almost all of the savings that he had accumulated over this period of time to get the person in charge of the Association of the Demon Emperor, Shi Dong, to agree to help him wipe out a first-rate sect in the northern frontier. However, a promise was just a promise. The assembly of the Demon Emperor was naturally not an impulsive and short-sighted existence. Since they were going to wipe out a first-rate sect, they had to be selective. They had to find a sect with more profits to make their move. If it was about the same, they would pick a soft persimmon to pinch. Although they had the same boss, the Northern Frontier Wang residents and the Assembly of the Demon Emperor were two different factions. Things like working together was just wishful thinking. Even Lin Yuan had to pay a price for using the Assembly of the Demon Emperor. What more an outsider like Lei Fan? Hence, after much deliberation, the Assembly of the Demon Emperor finally set their sights on the Flying Sun Pavilion. After all, although the Flying Sun Pavilion was a first-rate sect in the northern frontier, their foundation was still lacking compared to the other first-rate sections. Furthermore, it was rumored that the Flying Sun Pavilion had a rare lightning-attributed martial art. The Assembly of the Demon Emperor had no reason to let go of this soft persimmon that could be a fat sheep. Humph. Hearing that, Miao Chun broke out in cold sweat and said with a gloomy face, "You sure have big words. Although my cultivation isn't ranked high in the northern frontier, I'm not someone that can be trifled with." Icho. Taishi. Two voices rang out consecutively. A sharp sword chi exploded from the wine sword Xian's body. A snow-white longsword and a dark purple longsword flew over from afar like meteors. One on the left and one on the right. In an instant they pierced into Miao Chun's left and right shoulders. Even for someone as strong as Miao Chun, he was sent flying by the two swords and crashed heavily into his own courtyard. Miao Chun was caught off guard and lost both of his arms in the blink of an eye. Although it wasn't incurable, he definitely wouldn't be able to use both of his arms in this battle. However, this didn't make Miao Chun lose his fighting spirit. As the person in charge of a first-rate sect, if he were to cower in the matter of the sect's survival just because he was injured, how would he be able to walk in the pugilistic world in the future? Putao. Sang Luo. The wine sword Xian opened his mouth again. A red long sword and a green long sword pierced through the air. Just as Miao Chun leaped out from the ruins of his courtyard, they once again pierced into Miao Chun's legs accurately. In a face-to-face encounter, his limbs were crippled. A group of consecrators and elders of the Feiyang Pavilion looked at each other with horror in their eyes. They began to think about the origin of the wine sword Xian. He was obviously in the same realm as the pavilion master. Why didn't the pavilion master even have the ability to resist in front of him? The wine sword Xian saw that the atmosphere suddenly stagnated. He smiled freely and said indifferently, "Let me say it first. I have a total of 12 flying swords. You can leave or stay as you wish." As soon as the voice fell, the little thoughts in everyone's heart instantly collapsed. He fought with the powerhouse of the same level in a face-to-face encounter. Wasn't it over with one sword to kill the existence of the Heaven Dipper realm from the early stage to the high stage? So everyone didn't dare to be noisy. They all stood aside obediently, waiting for the winner between the wine sword Xian and Miao Chun. 1,000 days drunk. Seeing that everyone no longer moved, the wine sword Xian's gaze fell on Miao Chun, whose limbs were crippled, and opened his mouth again. This time, the sword didn't come from afar. The sword that the wine sword Xian was leaning on trembled slightly, trying to escape from the shackles of the scabbard. It turned into a cold light and instantly pierced through Miao Chun's chest. Miao Chun's eyes were wide open. There was still a look of unwillingness in his eyes, but he slowly fell back. The aura on his body also dissipated the moment the sword pierced through his chest. An existence at the peak of the Heaven Dipper realm didn't even have the chance to make a move against the wine sword Xian. Although the wine sword Xian made 5 sword attacks, strictly speaking, he only made 3 attacks from the beginning to the end. The people from the Demon Emperor Association will come over to take over the Feiyang Pavilion's assets. The Demon Emperor Association has a good grasp of the Feiyang Pavilion's assets. You should consider the consequences of lying and concealing the truth. The wine sword Xian pulled out the 5 long swords from Miao Chun's body one by one. Then he tidied up his white robe and walked towards the Feiyang Pavilion's mountain gate. He muttered, "That's all you have. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come personally. You delayed my drinking." How could the Sword King, who single-handedly killed the rebel army, be in existence that a mere leader of a sect in the northern frontier could challenge? The group of consecrators and elders of the Feiyang Pavilion also had a bitter expression. The little scheme in their hearts was also gone. While the Demon Emperor Association was growing stronger, the threshold to join was also terrifyingly low. Any cultivator who claimed to be a member of the Demon Emperor Association would be accepted. Of course, the Demon Emperor Association also had a set of identity screening procedures. It was just that outsiders didn't know about it, including those who were members. If they really fought, they could easily crush the association of the Demon Emperor and the northern frontier's Wang residents. Within 4 hours, 1/3 of the sects in the northern frontier had been wiped out. Even the Flying Sun Pavilion, a first-rate sect, had been annihilated by the association of demon monarchs. This made them tremble with fear. After all, the association of demon monarchs had the ability to annihilate first-rate sections. If the association of demon monarchs could annihilate the Flying Sun Pavilion, how could they not be annihilated? At the other side. At this moment, Lei Fan, who had returned to Shunning City, was looking at the reports of victory that were sent to him. He couldn't stop smiling. Now that the northern frontier was in a state of panic, the aristocratic families that weren't implicated were all watching the show peacefully. After all, in their opinion, they were ultimately different from the sections. The sects could indeed protect one side, but not only could the aristocratic families protect one side, they were also the strong and powerful economic pillars of the entire northern frontier. If they were to collapse, no matter how many spiritual items there were in the northern frontier, they wouldn't be able to sell as well as before. In this day and age, not everyone was qualified to cross the battlefield and come to the northern frontier to collect goods. The Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce was supplying goods to the outside world, and they would need the men of the aristocratic families. You would never be able to wake up a person who was pretending to be asleep. Just like how the aristocratic families were still indulging in their own fabricated dreams and didn't want to wake up. What the aristocratic families could do, the Northern Frontier Guard Corps couldn't do. Without the threat of the Xinwu dynasty and the Hengduan Mountains, Other than the sects, there weren't many forces that needed to mobilize the Northern Frontier Guard Corps. If it wasn't for the fact that 600,000 men wasn't a lot to begin with, and even if Lin Yuan didn't contact the Northern Frontier Prince's residence to sell spiritual items, Lei Fan would have long taken the lead to request for a reduction in the army. Now, the Northern Frontier sects only had one feeling towards the Northern Frontier Prince's residence, and the association of the Demon Emperor: fear. At this stage, Lei Fan's objective had been completely achieved. As long as the sects were afraid, they would definitely form an alliance. Although the sects wouldn't easily make a move against the Northern Frontier Prince's residence, even if the Northern Frontier Prince's residence was loyal to the Black Snake, they were still nominally under the Shenwu dynasty. Once they took the initiative to stir up trouble, it wouldn't be any different from a rebellion. The reason why the Azure Pung King was able to rebel was firstly, because his surname was Lei. Secondly, it was because Lei Qiuming had a high reputation in the military. Therefore, he was able to swiftly mobilize hundreds of thousands of troops for his own use. However, the sects in the Northern Frontier didn't have this ability, even if they added up to hundreds of thousands of men. In terms of combat strength, the underworld and the regular army were two different things. Didn't you see how those small sects didn't have any resistance in front of the Northern Frontier Guard Corps? Lord of the Northern Frontier, why are you smiling so happily? Did something good happen? Hu Yan, who was dressed in armor, strode into the office shared by the 7 city lords. He took a sip of tea and his eyes were filled with smiles. Hu Yan, who was born in an aristocratic family, didn't have a good impression of the sections. Moreover, his current boss Lin Yuan had an irreconcilable relationship with the sections. Usually the Hu family had been suppressed by the sections. Now that there was an opportunity to take revenge, Hu Yan naturally wouldn't miss it. Of course it's something good. Lei Fan put down the reports in his hands and spread his hands out with a smile. The various sects in the Northern Frontier have already started to prepare for the alliance. Don't you think that's a good thing? Hu Yan was slightly stunned and a tinge of doubt flashed across his eyes. But very quickly, a faint smile flashed across Hu Yan's face. You mean? That's right. The various sects have people from the Demon Emperor Association. Moreover, the alliance has just been established and no one will be willing to submit to anyone. Just creating a little bit of friction will be enough to blow things up. We can make use of this opportunity to implement the new policies that we had previously. The smile on Lei Fan's face didn't change, but his eyes were flashing with a cold glint as he said in a cold voice. Once the new policies are signed, even those super first-rate forces with Void Realm cultivators can forget about being an exception. Otherwise, there won't be any place for them in the 7 dynasties. And if they don't let us sign the new policies, then the super first-rate sects in the Northern Frontier will no longer have a need to exist. Without these cannon fodders, they will have no choice but to move out of the Northern Frontier sooner or later. At that time, our goal will still be achieved. Hu Yan's voice was similarly cold as he continued his sentence. Following that, he sighed with emotion. Lord Dragon King is still the best. To be able to play these sects and forces in the palm of his hand. No matter what they choose, it won't affect our plan. Chapter 359. The movement techniques of the illusionary god sect are only SOSO. The last Heaven Star Border Realm cultivator, who tried to escape, was killed by the halberd 100 miles away. Only then did Yan Xingqi lick his lips, as if he had not had enough. As a hint of regret flashed across his eyes. He had been hiding in the Northern Frontier for many years. Back then, the valiant general who charged into the battlefield had restrained his killing intent due to an unspoken rule in the Tianwu continent. He obediently squatted in Shunning City, bearing the title of Protector. Other than the battle with the Fire Kirin, the last time he fought was more than 10 years ago, and it was to take care of a group of ignorant heretic cultivators from the Shuangjin dynasty. The various forces abided by the rule that desolate demons and Kongming realm cultivators were not allowed to casually attack low-level cultivators. This was the same for the monsters that they treated as supplements. However, the heretic cultivators who were also humans were not included in this rule. These people spent all their time thinking about overthrowing the rule of humans, summoning an indescribable existence from the endless void to rule this world. Towards these brainless lunatics, no one cared about the rules. The corners of Chen Guanshan and Shui Yan's mouths twitched as a hint of fear flashed across their eyes. Originally, it was a fight to the death between them and Lin Yuan, and the outcome of the battle was as expected. When everyone stopped underestimating Lin Yuan and fought with him, Lin Yuan's method of instantly killing a Heaven Star Border Realm cultivator was not used. Other than those airborne realm cultivators who were just there to make up the numbers, the greatest result of the battle was the lightning cultivator that Lin Yuan killed after grasping the opponent's attack rhythm. However, when Yan Xingqi entered the battlefield, everyone knew what true strength was. Even if the remaining Heaven Star Border Realm cultivators used all their methods, they could only delay him for a little while. When Senior Su and Li Chang were both killed by Yan Xingqi, the Heaven Star Border Realm cultivator, who roared out the sound wave, immediately used his famous movement technique to escape. The moment he moved, he had already appeared dozens of miles away. With such speed, they would not be able to catch up even if they risked their lives. However, in front of Yan Xingqi, this protector only glanced at him before casually throwing out the halberd in his hand, killing the illusionary god sect cultivator easily. No wonder the Xinwu dynasty only sent one Heaven Star Border Realm cultivator to guard this place. As long as the desolate demons in the Hengduan mountain range did not come out, the northern frontier would be able to maintain a stable situation where the Hengduan mountain range. Black Snake, you have chosen a good path. However, it is a pity that you have affected the interests of too many people. If you are determined to take this path, you will definitely die in less than 3 years. Yan Xingqi did not even bother to pick up his halberd as his eyes revealed a trace of fatigue. It was not because of how tiring it was to suppress a group of Heaven Star Border Realm cultivators, but because it was simply boring. Senior, what can you teach me? Lin Yuan coiled up his snake body as a ray of light flashed across his heterochromatic eyes. What he wanted to do had indeed affected the interests of too many people. The so-called foundation of the aristocratic families and sects would be smashed and broken bit by bit in the face of Lin Yuan's reforms, until these existences no longer had the power to challenge Lin Yuan. They would either live within the rules that Lin Yuan had set for them, or be wiped out by Lin Yuan. Those aristocratic families and sects would obviously not sit and wait for that day to come. Even if what Lin Yuan said was true, that what he had set off was the tide of the era, and that anyone who tried to resist would be directly crushed, it was obvious that they would die regardless of whether they fought or not. These people would obviously not let Lin Yuan have an easy time. At worst, both sides would just perish together. Your new policies are not bad. The benefits are in the present, and the merits are in the future. However, the world will not tolerate this, so you cannot do these things. The reason is that your body is not strong enough to make everyone fear you. Yan Xingqi's eyes slightly narrowed as he pondered for a moment, then slowly said, therefore, you have 2 options now. One is to join forces with Lei Qiuxing and quickly eliminate the internal and external problems of the Xinwu dynasty. Then, you can hand over your new policies to Lei Qiuxing. This old man has been dissatisfied with the sects and aristocratic families for a long time. However, even if the aristocratic families were destroyed, there would always be a branch that would appear out of nowhere and continue to carry the banner of the aristocratic families. No matter how good Lei Qiuxing is at killing, he would not be able to wipe out everyone in the Xinwu dynasty, right? Yan Xingqi's suggestion made Lin Yuan's eyes light up. Handing over the new policies to Lei Qiuxing was indeed much more suitable than doing it himself. This overbearing king also did not like other voices in his country. The number of sects and aristocratic families that Lei Qiuxing found excuses to suppress and destroy was more than the total number of sects and aristocratic families in the northern frontier combined. However, there was no suitable way to wipe them out completely. Would your meritorious subordinates be rewarded? After the rewards, these fellows would become the new aristocratic families. Lin Yuan's method was not purely to destroy them, but to directly cut off their foundation. So what if there were aristocratic families everywhere? Once they jumped out of Lin Yuan's rules, Lei Qiuxing could easily label them as rebels, and then clean up these disobedient people. Even the imperial censors would have to obediently shut their mouths. Who would be willing to be associated with a group of rebels? May I ask, Senior, since there is one, then there will be 2 and 3, right? In the end, Yan Xingqi was an old senior who had more experience than the younger generation. Yan Xingqi's casual suggestion was enough to benefit Lin Yuan greatly. After all, he had never thought of joining hands with the indigenous powers of Sky Martial Continent to reform. In his eyes, even a king like Lei Qiuxing was an existence that was similar to a burden. What was the difference between the imperial family and the aristocratic families? They were just slightly bigger aristocratic families. That's right. Although this plan is safe and feasible, but you have to know that when you see Lei Qiuxing as your greatest enemy, Lei Qiuxing also has no reason to let you go. If you were just a noble in the northern frontier, it would be fine. But you were born in the Hengduan mountain range, and have the blood of the dragon clan flowing in your body. As such, the 2 great demonic beast groups are inextricably linked to you. Compared to the aristocratic families and sects, you, the Black Snake, are more of a threat to Lei Qiuxing. However, since the new policies were created by you, if anything were to happen, Lei Qiuxing would naturally find someone to take the blame and implicate you. In the short term, he will not be able to touch you, nor will he be able to touch you. If you grow fast enough, before Lei Qiuxing's blade cuts your neck, you will already have the qualifications to wrestle with him. At that time, he can only grit his teeth and swallow it in his stomach. Yan Xingqi's eyes shone brightly. As an existence that was on par with Lei Qiuxing in the past, even if he had been hidden for decades, Yan Xingqi's foresight was sufficiently shrewd. Chapter 360. However, this old man's second path still depends on you. After all, the Xinwu dynasty is currently in a mess. Even if you wisely chose to retreat in order to advance, helping Lei Qiuxing stabilize the situation, while also stabilizing your position as the god of the northern frontier, no one can deny that with your example, the entire Xinwu dynasty is now impetuous. Otherwise, the Qingpeng king wouldn't have directly started an uprising. If you don't want to take the safe path, you might as well directly fall out with Lei Qiuxing and quickly eliminate the Xinwu dynasty that has been lurking in the northern frontier for a long time. You will also defeat the sects and suppress the aristocratic families. In a short period of time, you will become the enemy of the entire world. However, the advantage of doing this is that as long as you don't infringe on the interests of those top-notch figures, and with this old man's support, there will be many people who want to beat you up, but those who really make a move will basically be within your capabilities. If you take this path, the only 2 requirements are that you are fierce enough and ruthless enough. Furthermore, you have to keep up with your growth speed. At least before this mess is settled by Lei Qiuxing, you have to grow to the point where Lei Qiuxing will splash blood on you. You, who have control of the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce and the Fey Trade, already have the initial requirements. Therefore, what you need to do now is... At this point, Yan Xingqi paused and said with a gloomy expression, increase your own strength, and at the same time, have more control over the northern frontier. Otherwise, Zhang Xiu won't kill you, Black Snake, and casually help a nobody to take over the foundation that you have painstakingly built. Lin Yuan didn't continue the conversation, and maintained his silence while revealing a thoughtful expression. Yan Xingqi was a fierce general who had been on the battlefield for many years. His strategic foresight was extremely accurate. The 2 suggestions he gave were both feasible. The first one was for Lei Qiuxing to fight with his life on the line, and the winner would definitely be Lei Qiuxing. However, after Lei Qiuxing won against the aristocratic families and sects, the first one to be dealt with would be Lin Yuan. The second option was to let Lin Yuan risk his life. As long as he could protect the base in his hands, Lei Qiuxing wouldn't be able to touch him for the time being. And Lei Qiuxing, who coveted the stability and unification of the northern frontier, would also take this path. However, this would allow Lin Yuan to enter the stage of power struggle in advance, and at the same time, weaken the enemies that Lin Yuan would have to face. After all, Lei Qiuxing wanted to walk the same path as Lin Yuan. Naturally, he wouldn't sit and watch Lin Yuan fall. Wouldn't that give those aristocratic families and sects the opportunity to spread rumors that Lin Yuan's path was evil? At that time, not to mention dealing with Lin Yuan in private, even some of the new national policies would lean towards supporting Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan pondered for a moment, then suddenly laughed and said loudly, "Senior has been hiding for dozens of years, and you still have such shrewd eyes. It seems that Lei Qiuxing's ability isn't that great after all." Lin Yuan's words were full of flattery, but more of a warning. After all, Yan Xingqi could help Lin Yuan come up with a plan, and had the confidence to support Lin Yuan. This meant that Yan Xingqi wasn't as quiet as he seemed on the surface. He was just waiting for an opportunity to come back and compete with Lei Qiuxing. And now that Lin Yuan had taken over the northern frontier, obviously, Yan Xingqi saw the opportunity to defeat that famous warrior of the past. Yan Xingqi stroked his beard and didn't say anything. But in his heart, he silently complained for a while. If Lei Qiuxing really didn't have the ability, then why did Wine Sword Mystery, who was at the peak of Heaven Dipper realm, hide in the northern frontier? Why couldn't the remaining members of the Jiao clan, who were supported by all the local officials of the dynasty, survive after leaving the Hengduan Mountains? Yan Xingqi was a Void Nether Realm warrior. Why would he stay in the northern frontier for dozens of years? Lei Qiuxing not only had the ability to recognize people, he also knew how to use them, and dared to use them. Even if he was afraid of Yan Xingqi, he still only exiled him to the bitter cold northern frontier to guard his door. Because although Lei Qiuxing had a headache over them, but if both sides really went all out, Lei Qiuxing could still completely control them. Even Yan Xingqi, who couldn't win against Lei Qiuxing in the past, had reached the Void Nether Realm for such a long time. How could Lei Qiuxing's strength stop at the Heaven Dipper realm? It was nothing more than Lei Qiuxing deceiving others for the sake of carrying out some of his plans. All these years, because of Lei Qiuxing's constant suppression of the aristocratic families and sects, it wasn't as if there were no void-tier cultivators who had infiltrated the imperial capital to assassinate Lei Qiuxing. But in the end, didn't they all end up without any news? However, this black snake that jumped out of Lei Qiuxing's calculations did indeed let Yan Xingqi see a glimmer of hope. A glimmer of hope to defeat that man. The man and the snake looked at each other for a while. Then Yan Xingqi finally let go of his hand that was stroking his beard, and said with a smile, "Looks like Lord Dragon King has already made his decision. Then I should go and make some preparations. Goodbye. I won't see you out." Lin Yuan nodded slightly, then turned his head to look at Chen Guanshan and Shui Yin beside him, and whispered a few words to them. The two of them then followed Yan Xingqi's path towards the exit of the secret territory. Lin Yuan, who was standing at the same spot, was silent for a while, then he laughed coldly. Lei Fan, being too ambitious is not a good thing. I hope you don't go overboard and cause everyone to be unable to clean up the mess." As his voice fell, Lin Yuan's body shook, and he abruptly flew towards the palace in the center of the secret territory. After Lin Yuan's figure had completely disappeared, a huge figure slowly appeared. A ferocious scarlet snake tail wrapped around the tortoiseshell, and it said with a vicious tone, "Zhen Hai, you have guarded Lord's tomb for so many years, and you just watched as that black Jiao disturbed Lord's peace?" The tortoiseshell called Zhen Hai was silent for a while, then he slowly replied, "Ingtian, you and I are one. Even that old monk could see through my thoughts. Must you ask the obvious? Those fellows could come back at any time, and with one more person who knows the inside story, our strength will increase. Compared to this world, do you think Lord's peace is more important?" The golden relic also flew out from the tortoiseshell, chanting Buddha's name. Amitabha, to be able to maintain his state of mind under the influence of that evil being, and to be able to understand our language, this black Jiao is either the son of some great person, or a powerful being who has reincarnated. With him around, this world will indeed be more stable. After all, he is in existence who has survived the sea of bitterness as a spirit. Zhen Hai leisurely continued the relic's words, his voice carrying a hint of self-mockery. "We have already fallen to such a state, and even if we want to protect this world, we can't do it anymore. Why don't we just hand it over to that young man, and let him fight for us? Being suppressed in this Sumeru world like this, there is nothing bad about it. It's just that the old monk is chanting scriptures every day. It's too noisy. Yes. Yes. Ing Tian nodded his head, agreeing with Zhen Hai's last sentence. Chapter 361. Time flowed like water. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Master Qin sat in the meditation hall and cultivated. 3 days ago, all the major sects gave up their bases that they had been operating for many years without hesitation. After dismissing a large number of disciples, they brought their elites to the Freedom Yard for the purpose of contending against the northern frontier Wangfu. If it was only second-rate or third-rate sects that were swept away, they could still sit back and watch the northern region Lord Mansion perform. However, as a first-rate sect, the Flying Sun Pavilion was actually uprooted on the same day. Even the sect's assets fell into the hands of the Association of Demon Emperors. This was something that they couldn't help but be fearful of. Miao Chun was in existence at the peak of the Heaven Dipper realm. Even if he wasn't in the first sequence, he was still a famous expert. However, according to insiders, Miao Chun couldn't even last 3 moves against the Association of the Demon Emperor's member, who called himself Jiu Jianxian. Yes, 3 moves. 1 move and 2 swords were also 3 moves. Furthermore, everyone could tell that the reason why Miao Chun was able to withstand 3 moves was because the Wine Sword Profound was deliberately intimidating the people of the Flying Sun Pavilion. Otherwise, the moment Miao Chun stepped out of the courtyard, the Wine Sword Profound would have easily pierced Miao Chun's heart. Therefore, the various sects could not sit still, and all of them came to the Freedom Courtyard to seek refuge. Who asked the Freedom Yard to have 3 Void Realm cultivators? Qin, Kushuan, and Kuhai. The 3 masters were famous in the northern frontier for many years. Even Yan Xingqi and the 3 great beast kings didn't dare to provoke the Freedom Yard. A mere black snake and the northern frontier Wangfu dared to cause trouble in the Freedom Yard? Abbot, it's not good. It's not good. A young monk wearing a yellow robe rushed into Master Qin's meditation hall. He was crying with a young and tender face. Even his voice sounded like he was about to cry. Master Qin, who was offended by the young monk, frowned slightly. However, he couldn't bear to reprimand him when he saw the young monk's dejected face. He slowly stood up from the praying mat, shook off the non-existent dust on his red robe, and said in a deep voice, "My Buddha oversees the heavens. Even if the extraterritorial sky demon descends, the Freedom Yard can still become a pure land. What happened to make you so flustered?" Someone died. The young novice monk was startled by Master Qin's frown, but he quickly explained the reason. With all the major sects and forces gathered near the repose courtyard, the northern frontier duke's mansion indeed did not have the guts to touch them. But under the deterrence of Lin Yuan, Lei Fan, who had been an obedient child for so long, had just taken control of the situation and viciously bit down on those major sects and forces. Even though he knew what it meant to show mercy wherever possible, and clearly knew that he had already achieved great results in the battle, he was still unwilling to let the matter drop just like that. He had been thinking of ways to incite conflict between both sides all this while, due to the activities of some members of the Association of the Demon Emperor. A young sect master of a first-rate sect had killed a rich young master, who had argued with him in order to win a smile from a beauty. If it was during normal times, this matter would have been reduced to a small matter. At most, the first-rate sect would have held a banquet to apologize and give enough face to the young master's family. In the end, they would have promised some benefits and this matter would have been over. But what was the situation now? Anyone with a discerning eye could see that the northern frontier duke's mansion had taken action for real this time. Cultivators of the Void Realm were not allowed to interfere, and without the existence of Void Realm cultivators, they would not be able to win against the northern frontier duke's mansion. Therefore, the sects and forces could be said to be on the verge of collapse. Although some of the more astute aristocratic families had sensed that something was wrong, but they still believed that this was a good opportunity. The greed in their nature did not allow them to choose the method of settling this privately, as they had done in the past. Instead, they chose to report this matter to the authorities, and directly shoved this matter into the hands of the northern frontier duke's mansion. Of course, with the support of the Freedom Courtyard, They had to stand up for the sects under their protection for the sake of their reputation. If the power of the aristocratic families reporting to the authorities was average, the Freedom Courtyard could directly suppress the Northern Frontier Duke's mansion and give them a chance to mediate privately. Unfortunately, the aristocratic families of the Northern Frontier had multiplied for so many years, especially the Qiao family, an ancient family with a history of nearly 1,000 years. Not to mention how many aristocratic families in the Northern Frontier relied on the Qiao family for survival. If there was a chance, these aristocratic families would all want to have a marriage alliance with the Qiao family. Putting aside the complicated relationship, that unfortunate rich young master would have to call the current head of the Qiao family grand-uncle. Although the relationship between the Qiao family and the Northern Frontier Duke's mansion had not been made public, they were already in cahoots in private. Naturally, they would not let go of this opportunity to suppress the sections. Even with his small brain, he could tell that if it weren't for the fact that the matter was tricky, how could those masters in the Freedom Yard, whose mouths were full of oil, find trouble for themselves by asking for the help of 3 senior masters who had titles, but didn't care about worldly affairs and focused on cultivation? Chapter 362. Master Qin glanced at the unlucky kid, shook his head and said nothing. How should he deal with this? He just couldn't understand why those brats had to get themselves into such trouble. What kind of existence was that black snake? That was an existence who dared to kill the fire Qilin of the desolate demon realm, when he was only at the peak of wisdom state. Furthermore, he planned meticulously, and even plotted against him and Yan Xingqi step by step. In the end, he even killed the old demon beast, the fire Qilin, with his own hands. Thinking about it carefully after returning to the Freedom Courtyard, Master Qin was so shocked that he broke out in cold sweat. How much did your martial uncles take from them to agree to protect them? Master Qin was silent for a moment, and decided to ask about the price first. If it really didn't work, the Freedom Yard would pay double the price to send them away. 1/3 of each family's property. The young novice shrunk his neck guiltily and whispered. When Master Qin asked, he already knew what this senior was planning. After all, in the Jianghu, who wouldn't offend a few existences that they couldn't afford to offend? Didn't the so-called divine sects and Jianghu legends of the Northern Frontier come to make a living at this time? They would step out to protect those who had nowhere else to go, and then take a huge sum of money from those who were protected. Most of the time, they didn't even need to do anything. Which cultivator in Jianghu wouldn't give each other face? However, no matter how famous they were, there would always be a time when they couldn't protect themselves. For example, at this moment, Master Qin was determined not to get into trouble, so he wanted to follow the rules of the Jianghu and give them 3 times the promised benefits, and then send them away safely. This was the most benevolent thing he could do. Hiss. After hearing the young novice monk's offer, Master Qin gasped in shock. There were many sects of all sizes in the Northern Frontier. What did it mean for each family to own 1/3 of their property? Even if they sold all the golden statues that the pilgrims in the Freedom Yard spent a lot of money to make, they still wouldn't be able to gather enough money to send these demons away. Therefore, the Freedom Yard had to take care of this matter, and they had to take care of it well. Otherwise, who would respect the Freedom Yard in the future? Master Qin really wished he could slap all these brainless juniors to death. Now that the young sect master had committed a crime, and was hiding in the Freedom Courtyard, the Northern Region Lord's palace had valiantly come to the Freedom Courtyard to demand for him. Putting aside the Northern Region Lord's palace and the association of the Shifter Emperor, there were still many aristocratic families behind this matter. If the Freedom Courtyard couldn't give a satisfactory explanation, they wouldn't let this matter go so easily. Not give. The Northern Region King Palace dared to forcefully tear down the Freedom Courtyard and lock them up. If the Freedom Courtyard resisted, they would be labeled as traitors. At that time, even if they had 3 Void Realm cultivators, they wouldn't be able to do anything. No dynasty would take in a bunch of traitors. At that time, they would have to cross the ocean and hide. They would be even worse than those evil cultivators hiding in the dark. Give. Even if the repose courtyard's reputation was ruined, no matter how many powerhouses there were in the repose courtyard or how outstanding their techniques were, the cultivation forces would never give them any face in the future. Even those young men who wanted to cultivate had to look at the reputation of the sect before they wanted to be apprenticed. Perhaps after this matter was over, the repose courtyard would never be able to receive a single outstanding disciple in the future. Master Qin almost burst into tears. It was too difficult. It was really too difficult. Let's go out and take a look. After thinking for a while, Master Qin walked out of the temple. Although he didn't have the confidence to protect the young master, but he had participated in the killing of Wuxia. He had some ties with Lei Fan and Lin Yuan. Although he had done it for the sake of the Lei family, but now, if he wanted to use this matter to plead for mercy, Lei Fan and Lin Yuan wouldn't take him seriously. The young master couldn't be saved. But if the royal residents of the northern frontier wanted to use this matter to destroy a sect, then he would not agree to it. In the end, just as he walked out of the temple, Master Qin felt a darkness in front of him. When he raised his head, he saw a black snake about 10,000 feet long circling in the sky above the Freedom Yard. One of its eyes was blue, and the other was the color of ice. It was coldly looking at the Freedom Yard. Although he didn't know why, Master Qin could feel that the black snake was looking at him. Qin of the Freedom Yard. Greetings to the Dragon King of the Northern Frontier. The sinister look in Master Qin's eyes disappeared in an instant, and was replaced by a smile. Lin Yuan nodded calmly. There was no change in his eyes. He said in a low voice, Master Qin has been in charge of the Northern Frontier for many years, and has a great reputation. And this is not the first time you have met this king. There is no need to be so polite. More and more cultivators gathered. Looking at Lin Yuan circling in the sky, they were all speechless. What kind of F***king monster was this? In less than a year and a half, it went from a beast without any cultivation to a mountain lord monster capable of flight. Furthermore, the pressure it exuded was so strong that some airborne realm cultivators couldn't help but kneel down as soon as they saw Lin Yuan, as if they were worshipping a high and mighty god. The Dragon King is here, and the Freedom Yard. Master Qin. The laws of the Northern Frontier are strict, and this king has made sure that the new laws of the Northern Frontier have been distributed to every household. As such, you should know that anyone who kills without reason within the jurisdiction of the Northern Frontier, regardless of whether they are humans or monsters, will have to pay with their lives in the best-case scenario. Master Qin, you should know that this king is now the god of the Northern Frontier conferred by the dynasty, and he has the responsibility of governing the monsters in the Northern Frontier. If this most basic rule is broken, there will be no trade in the Northern Frontier in the future. Wouldn't any person or monster dare to wantonly wage war within the jurisdiction of the Northern Frontier? Before Master Qin's voice fell, Lin Yuan had already interrupted Master Qin. I know, but the culprit is just a child. I hope that Lord Dragon King can make things easier for me. What a joke. The murderer is a child, but the one who died in my house is not a child? I may not be young, but the elders in my family are still around, and I can still be considered a child. Can't I just kill a few disciples of the Freedom Yard, and then say that I am a child and ask the Northern Frontier to make things easier for me? This time, the one who interrupted Master Qin was not Lin Yuan, but the master of the Qiao clan who went to report to the authorities. He was at level 7 of the Heaven Star realm and ranked 4th in the Qiao clan. He was usually responsible for teaching the disciples of the Qiao clan to cultivate. He had no talent in business or family management, but he was good at fighting and killing, and his voice was also surprisingly loud. Chapter 363. As soon as 4th Master Qiao finished speaking, the generals of the Northern Frontier Guard Army could not help but burst into laughter. For a rough man in his 60s to call him a child in front of so many people, those who had not received special training would find it hard to hold back their laughter. Even though they had deliberately lowered their voices, everyone present was a cultivator with decent cultivation. Their 5 senses were far superior to that of ordinary people, so they naturally heard the sneers. However, 4th Master Qiao, who was the laughingstock, did not have an uncomfortable expression. On the contrary, Master Qin's face had completely darkened. In any case, he was a Void Realm cultivator, yet he had been interrupted twice in a row. Moreover, Fourth Master Qiao had directly declared that he would kill a disciple of the Freedom Courtyard. For such a thing to happen to him, not to mention a monk, even Buddha would be somewhat angry. Make things easier? Lin Yuan's heterochromatic vertical pupils slightly trembled as he softly muttered. Then Lin Yuan raised his head and said in an icy tone, Master Qin's face is naturally useful. In the northern frontier, which cultivator would not give you some face? Unfortunately, the northern frontier does not care about face, only rules. If it was a private matter between you and me, not only would I make things easier, I would also have to respect you as an elder. But this is official business. There is only one choice for official business in the northern frontier, and that is to strictly enforce the new northern frontier law. If this matter was different, Lin Yuan would really have to give face to a Void Realm senior. However, this involved the most basic rule of the northern frontier law: a life for a life. Lin Yuan naturally could not take even half a step back. If the Freedom Courtyard straightforwardly handed over the person to them, Lin Yuan would feel that it was dull, and his spirit would also be dampened. But the Freedom Courtyard wanted to protect the person? Then I'm sorry. This daddy is here to slap your face. If I don't take you, the #1 sect in the northern frontier, as an example, who would take the new northern frontier law seriously, then there's no room for discussion? Master Qin's gloomy face didn't change, but a sinister look appeared in his eyes again. He could directly kill Lin Yuan, and the 3 Kongming realm cultivators of the Freedom Courtyard would take action. Not to mention Lin Yuan. Even the guards of the northern region who planned to come to the door and arrest them would not be able to escape. However, this was the Tianwu continent, not some secret realm or Sumeru world. The Freedom Courtyard did not want to become a rebel, and Master Qin did not want to become the prey of those demon beasts in the desolate demon realm of the Hengduan Mountains. Therefore, he could only stare hatefully at Lin Yuan, but he did not have the courage to attack. Naturally, his aura had weakened. There's nothing to talk about. Get him. There was not even a ripple in Lin Yuan's eyes. He had obtained the inheritance of an ancient power from the secret territory, and knew some secrets. Therefore, Lin Yuan was now clear about where the existences of the Kongming realm and above were gathered, and what they were doing. Compared to those terrible enemies, the so-called sects and the 7 great empires were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in Lin Yuan's eyes. They were not worth mentioning at all. Let them pass. Seeing that Lin Yuan was determined to take them, Master Qin glared at Lin Yuan, and could only helplessly let them pass. After saying this, Master Qin was too lazy to care about what would happen in the future. Anyway, he was sure that from now on, there would be no place for sects and forces like them to take root in the northern region. Other than the cultivators who were willing to join the Northern Region Academy and become instructors. All of them had either died under the continuous persecution of the Black Snake or left the Northern Region because they could not bear the pressure. If the foundations of the sects could not be preserved, what was the use of face? It was better to go back and think of a way out, and find a good place to settle down. Lin Yuan's unyielding action just now had already shown that he didn't want to cover up this matter this time. Instead, he wanted to strike while the iron was hot and humiliate the Freedom Courtyard first. Then similar things would continue to happen to the disciples of these sections. Even if the sects strictly guarded them, they couldn't prevent the traitor of the Demon Emperor's Association in their own sect, right? Soon, a group of Beijing guards who had received the imperial edict dragged out a young master wearing a moon-white robe. This young master's appearance was not bad, but his eyes were a little dim, and his eye bags were not shallow. He looked like a waxy head who had indulged too much in debauchery, and had been robbed of everything by wine, women and greed. Now that he was being dragged out by the Beijing guards, he was so scared that he cried out for his father to save him. Unfortunately, the expression on his father's face did not change from beginning to end, as if the young master who was being dragged away was not his son at all. This was because he knew very well that if the Freedom Courtyard could not protect someone, what could his first-rate sect, whose strength was far below theirs, do? If he did not speak up now, it would be fine if one of his sons died. If he spoke up, his whole family might be wiped out. However, just because he did not speak up did not mean that others would not speak up. This black snake has no intention of letting our sect disciples live. Today the young sect master of the fish and water sect was taken away. Who knows who else will be taken away tomorrow? If we swallow this humiliation, we will all be treated as examples of the new laws of the northern frontier, and be beheaded in public. Someone in the crowd yelled out. The group of sect disciples suddenly came to their senses, and they all looked at the northern frontier guards with ferocious eyes. Today they could kill their fellow cultivators and not themselves, but if all of their fellow cultivators died, they would have to die even if they did not. Clang, 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 the sound of countless sharp swords being unsheathed rang out. Even if some of the more astute people wanted to stop them, it was too late. These sect disciples immediately rushed forward with red eyes, and fought with the Beijing guards who had been prepared for this. In an instant, there were flashes of swords and sabers everywhere. All kinds of blood and broken limbs flew everywhere. The peaceful place of Buddhism had been turned into a bloody purgatory. Release the signal flare, and call for help. Zhang Qilin, who was in charge of arresting the criminals, pulled out his saber expressionlessly. After giving the order, he rushed into the battle line, and cut down a few sect disciples. Then he growled, "You are soldiers, so act like one. Don't fight like a bunch of ruffians. Don't tell others that you are my soldiers." Although Li Zhongxing and Zhang Qilin had brought Shen Linjun's reserve troops, they were still the most elite troops of the Shenwu dynasty. Whether it was their combat strength or training methods, they were second to none. Therefore, with these reserve troops as the backbone to train the entire army, the 600,000 northern frontier guards were no longer the same as before. They were also proficient in the art of battle formations that soldiers must know if they wanted to increase their chances of survival on the battlefield. Chapter 364. After being reminded by Zhang Qilin, they all found familiar comrades, and began to shrink from the long front line. It seemed that they were surrounded by the disciples of various sects. But in fact, from the originally evenly matched situation, it suddenly became a situation where 4 or 5 guards of Beijing faced one disciple of a sect at the same time. There were many disciples of various sects, but the field was blocked by the guards of the northern frontier. No matter how many people there were, they could only squeeze outside one by one. The pressure on the guards of the northern frontier was greatly reduced, and they could even defeat the disciples of various sects without spending much energy. Swoosh! A signal flare shot up. It suddenly exploded hundreds of meters high in the sky. In broad daylight, it actually lit up a gorgeous firework in the shape of a long red saber. This was a signal flare specially made by the guards of Beijing, which was specially used to call for reinforcements. It could be seen clearly within hundreds of miles, and the color of the signal flare was different depending on the opponent. For example, the disciples of various sects, who needed a large number of reinforcements, were the second most dangerous red saber. In addition, there were also white saber, who was used for warning, green saber, who needed small-scale reinforcements, blue saber, who needed the support of hundreds of people, and black saber, who was the most dangerous black saber, who even needed all the guards of the northern frontier to come out in full force. All of these were made step by step under the close discussion of Luo Su, Li Zhongxing, and others. It's bad. Seeing the signal flare explode, Master Qian's expression suddenly became interesting. Lin Yuan was determined to slap the face of the Freedom Yard today, and someone suddenly fanned the flames. How could he not understand that the words just now were not because someone was indignant, but because Lin Yuan had long planned this play? In a moment, the guards of the northern frontier, who had been stationed nearby, would swarm here. At that time, all the disciples of various sects present would be killed, and perhaps even the Freedom Yard would be killed. How cruel! Master Qian waved his hand angrily, and suppressed his desire to kill Lin Yuan again. With a pale face he raised his voice and said, "Disciples of the Freedom Yard, enter the inner temple immediately. You are not allowed to participate in this armed fight. Violators will be expelled from the sect." Compared to the problem of face, Master Qin still prioritized the inheritance of the sect. Even if his current actions would cause the Freedom Yard to lose face, and even if some of the more radical disciples would directly betray the Freedom Yard, at least in the play that Lin Yuan had designed, he had successfully removed the Freedom Yard from the situation. When Ku Hai and Ku Xian saw that Master Qin had come out of seclusion, they didn't want to care about these worldly affairs. However, when they saw how shameless Master Qin was, they quickly figured out what was going on. They also began to call the disciples of the Freedom Courtyard to quickly enter the inner temple. They also ordered the disciples of the Freedom Courtyard to quickly enter the inner temple. They also ordered the disciples of the Freedom Courtyard to quickly enter the inner temple. They also ordered the disciples of the Freedom Courtyard to quickly enter the inner temple. They also ordered the disciples of the Freedom Courtyard to quickly enter the inner temple. Although after this matter was over, he would still be humiliated by Lin Yuan, but he still had to maintain enough face. At the very least, he could not allow Lin Yuan to carry out another great purge and drag the Freedom Yard into this quagmire. More and more soldiers of the Northern Frontier Guard Army joined the battle. Standing on the wall watching the battle, Master Qin felt more and more bitter in his heart. Although he had expected this, but it had really happened, and he still felt his face burning. Originally, he had wanted to make use of Lin Yuan's relationship with Lei Fan to persuade Lin Yuan to be merciful this time. But in the end, Lin Yuan did not even put him in his eyes at all. Otherwise, he would not have prepared a spy to fan the flames, and even stationed a large number of the Northern Frontier Guard Army near the Freedom Yard. He had still wanted to ask Lin Yuan to give him some face. But in the end, Lin Yuan did not even take him seriously. The battle lasted for a full hour. The front yard that the Freedom Yard was proud of, which was slowly carved out of a large piece of white jade, was completely dyed red with blood. Other than a few of the Northern Frontier Guard Army who had been maimed and killed, almost all of the sect disciples who had participated in this battle, other than those who had long taken off their sect's uniform and attacked their own people, had died in this battle. Even some of the rather famous sect leaders and elders had not escaped. Of course, there were also a few sect leaders of the Heavenly Dipper realm who had long seen that something was wrong, and had directly abandoned their weapons and surrendered, allowing the Northern Frontier Guard Army to take them down. They wanted to use their family's property to exchange for a way out. Otherwise, the casualties of the Northern Frontier Guard Army would have been even greater. But that was all, because the victor of this battle had already been decided from the moment the script began. Standing on the wall, Master Qin's face was cold as he said in a cold voice, "Lord Dragon King, the criminals have been killed on the spot, but you still do not leave. What is the meaning of this? Do you not even want to let go of the Freedom Yard?" Master Qin had already been slapped in the face several times. At this moment, even if he had an indifferent temperament, he really could not bring out a good face to face Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan slowly landed on the ground, shrunk his body, and said with a smile, "Master, you misunderstood me. Although I am a demonic beast, I am also fascinated by the Buddhism sect. If it was not necessary, why would I kill in the Buddhism sect? It's just that these sect disciples openly rebelled and attacked the Northern Frontier Guard Army. If they are not uprooted, sooner or later they will become a big stain on the Northern Frontier. Master, what do you think?" The corner of Master Qin's mouth twitched slightly. In his heart he thought, "You little bastard, you are very evil." All the major sects had come to seek the protection of the Freedom Courtyard. Of course, the Freedom Courtyard did not have such a large space, so only a portion of the disciples had gathered there. There were still many disciples hiding within the range of the Freedom Courtyard. This black snake was clearly someone who did not want to waste the effort to find it, and wanted the Freedom Courtyard to be a traitor. Alright, this little monk also hates these lawless people of the pugilistic world. I'll go and instruct my disciples to assist the lords in capturing those bandits hiding near my Freedom Courtyard. Master Qin had already lost all his face, and it was not a big deal to lose it again. Even if he wanted to tear Lin Yuan apart, he had to make a concession at this moment. He threw the Freedom Yard's face to the ground and trampled on it. However, after Master Qin's words, The Northern Frontier Guard Army in the front yard still did not have the slightest intention to leave. Instead, they all looked at Master Qin with ferocious smiles. What is the meaning of this? Seeing that Lin Yuan was still unforgiving, Master Qin could no longer hold back and asked loudly. Lin Yuan shook his head and said lazily, Master Qin, you are so forgetful. There are so many thieves hiding in the Freedom Yard, and there may be one or two in the inner temple. For everyone's safety, please open the gate of the inner temple and let my people in to search. Then everyone will be at ease, right? Chapter 365. As Lin Yuan's words fell, the cultivators of the repose court, including Master Qin, felt as if a basin of ice water had been poured over them. Their bodies began to tremble uncontrollably. Going too far. These words appeared in the minds of all the disciples of the repose court at the same time. Their eyes were like sharp blades as they stared at Lin Yuan, wanting nothing more than to rip a piece of flesh from Lin Yuan's body. What sort of place was the repose court's inner temple? It was the burial ground of many of the repose court's predecessors, the place where the experts of the repose court cultivated, and also the place where the repose court's cultivation methods and various resources were accumulated. Not to mention Lin Yuan, and the others who harbored enmity toward the repose court. Even the disciples of the repose court would not be able to easily enter the inner temple if they did not have a certain level of qualifications, and were on the northern frontier. Now with just a few words from Lin Yuan, the repose court wanted to open the gates of the inner temple, and let them in to search? What was the difference between this method, and having the disciples of the repose court take off all their clothes in public? Zhang Qilin, who had just fought a battle, wiped the blood from his face and stepped forward. He loudly said, Masters, you must think carefully. If you do not let us search the repose court today, it will be fine if these evil creatures who dared to openly attack the guards of the northern frontier are all cleaned up. But if one or two of them suddenly appear, I fear that you will not be able to wash away your suspicions. Extremely shameless. The cultivators of the repose court trembled even more violently. These guards of the northern frontier had not come to investigate the remnants of the sections. They simply wanted to investigate the wealth of the repose court. Even humiliating the repose court was only a secondary reason. But even though they knew of these people's wild ambitions, none of them dared to stand out and say a word of justice. The smell of blood in the front courtyard had yet to dissipate. Even from a distance, they could smell the choking smell of blood in the air. And at this moment, the guards of the northern frontier standing in the sea of blood and corpses and shouting were all like the sky demon described in the Buddhist scriptures. No, they were even more detestable than the sky demon. Since the masters are not willing to do this, then forget it. Lin Yuan suddenly turned around and said with a cold smile, After all, I still have to give face to Master Qin. This king will make things easier for Master Qin. I won't search the Freedom Courtyard. Let's go. Lin Yuan emphasized the words, do me a favor, as if he was afraid that Master Qin would not be able to hear the mockery in Lin Yuan's words. Master Qin was furious to the extreme, but not only did he not fly into a rage, he even calmed down. His gaze fell on Lin Yuan as he began to think to himself. This black snake had forced the Freedom Courtyard again and again, even now using words to fan the flames. His goal was to cause conflict between the Freedom Courtyard and him, so that the Freedom Courtyard would be included in the ranks of traitors. But Master Qin truly could not understand. The Freedom Courtyard was a sect guarded by 3 Void Realm experts. Even if this black snake's battle prowess could not be measured by cultivation, he had only just entered the Mountain Lord realm. Where did he find the courage to clamor with him? Could it be that, what else did this black snake rely on? After pondering for a moment, Master Qin suddenly smiled bitterly and said, Your Excellency Dragon King, please stop. I've thought about it for a moment. These ambitious people dared to do such a disrespectful thing, because they have some tricks up their sleeves. Although Freedom Yard is a little famous in the northern region, I dare not say that I'm the leader. Perhaps there are some evil creatures hiding in the inner temple, by some unscrupulous means. Please enter the temple and search. In this way, Everyone can deal with the matter at hand with peace of mind. His face was already swollen from the slap, so this last trembling was not a big deal. Even though Master Qin did not know what the black snake was relying on, he was sure that the black snake would not let it go so easily. If he did not shut the black snake's mouth today, the Freedom Courtyard would not be able to escape from his evil claws in the future. Even if the black snake wanted to completely destroy the Freedom Courtyard, he did not have the ability to do so now. Today, he searched the inner temple only to make the Freedom Courtyard pay a large sum of money when they moved away from the northern frontier. Even though he felt the pinch, they did not lack this kind of thing. The remnants of the sects were wiped out? How could that be possible? Even if the black snake really wiped out 99% of the sects in the northern frontier, so what? As long as there was still a place for sects to grow in the northern frontier, the black snake would not let it go. When the time came, those sect's disciples who had betrayed the association of the demon emperor could jump out at any time to make trouble for the black snake. The Freedom Courtyard might be able to suppress the black snake today, but it was hard to say what would happen in the future. After all, in less than a year and a half, the black serpent had grown from an ordinary beast to a mountain lord. It could no longer be considered a genius. Compared to normal cultivation, the black serpent's speed of advancement was indeed like the reincarnation of a great monster that had survived from ancient times until now, gradually recovering the cultivation of its predecessor. As soon as the doors to the inner temple opened, the well-prepared guards of the northern region immediately filed in. They did not even bother to exchange pleasantries with the cultivators of the Freedom Courtyard. They either barged their way to other places, or began to rummage through chests and cabinets. What was even more outrageous was that the people rummaging through chests and cabinets did not even spare the small drawers. Was that a place where a person could hide? Even a baby could not fit in a small drawer. If a person could hide in a small drawer, they would have been cut up and stuffed in. Lin Yuan did not join the search. After all, with the existence of the Eye of God, all the movements of the Freedom Courtyard were under his control. Whether there were people hiding in it naturally could not be hidden from his eyes. Many thanks for Venerable Master's understanding. Lin Yuan nodded slightly at Venerable Qin, then said in a low voice, "Since that is the case, this king believes that Venerable Master is not in cahoots with those rebels. When this king meets with the king of the northern frontier, he will naturally speak on Venerable Master's behalf. In the future, if I have the chance to visit the Freedom Courtyard again, this king will definitely prepare a generous gift for Venerable Master as an apology. Lord Dragon King is too courteous. As a member of the northern frontier, this humble monk will naturally not sit by and watch these rebels commit crimes and do nothing. This humble monk is already ashamed of his negligence. How can I blame Lord Dragon King?" Although Venerable Qin could not even smile, he still had to say those hypocritical words. His face had already been beaten to such a state by the black snake. If he were to start a conflict because of his words, then wouldn't his forbearance today be for naught? More than 180 monthly votes plus more chapters. Chapter 366. This king still has important matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Lin Yuan once again nodded at Master Qin. Then with a shake of his body, he soared into the sky and flew directly in the direction of Shunning City. Firstly, he really did have important matters to attend to. Secondly, he really did not want to stay here any longer. The strength of the Freedom Courtyard was much stronger than Lin Yuan had initially predicted. At least, before Lin Yuan used his trump card, the Northern Frontier Guard Army would definitely not be able to contend against the Freedom Courtyard. However, Master Qin, without knowing whether or not Lin Yuan had a trump card and what his trump card was cautious and patient. Lin Yuan was even worried that if he continued to stay here, he might not be able to hold back his laughter. At that time, no matter how good Master Qin's self-comforting skills were, he would not have a good ending today. Although the sword had been drawn, it had not reached the stage where blood would be spilled. After all, the forces with Void Netherrealm cultivators were still as stable as Mount Tai. Even if the sects below were divided into first, second, and third-rate forces, They were actually just a bunch of fellows that depended on them. If he could not uproot or expel these sects with void nether realm cultivators, then it would be useless even if he killed a lot of people today. Sects were no different from aristocratic families. As long as the limelight passed, there would be countless sects that would be re-established. In this aspect, even aristocratic families would admit that they were inferior. After all, if an aristocratic family wanted to establish itself, they would need to find a bunch of relatives who were more or less related to them by blood. It was not like a family of 3 that could raise a few guests or consecrators to be called an aristocratic family. At that level, they would at most be called a tyrant or a nouveau riche. For hours later, Lin Yuan had already soared into the sky and arrived at the Northern Frontier Prince's mansion in Shunning City. This newly built Northern Frontier Prince's mansion was not a small project. It was even larger than all of the Dragon King temples that Lei Fan had built for Lin Yuan in the Northern Frontier. However, these 2 projects were completed at the same time in less than 3 days. After all, the current situation was chaotic. Although not everyone dared to make a fortune in this chaos, there were still many people who wanted to get some soup. The Shunwu dynasty was not just simply at war with the 2 dynasties. Even within its own territory, there were wars everywhere. Not to mention the small scale, there were 7 or 8 warlords like Lei Qiuming who had hundreds of thousands of troops. However, most of them were sects, bandits, and aristocratic families. Their fighting strength was naturally incomparable to the professionally trained army of Lei Qiuming. Compared to the chaotic scene in the south, the northern frontier, which had been unified by Lin Yuan long ago, had become one of the few places in the Shunwu dynasty that could be called a paradise. Some of the dignitaries and big shots had bought houses in the northern frontier and moved their descendants to the northern frontier. They did not expect to be able to take root in the northern frontier, but only hoped to leave behind a bloodline in this chaotic world. As for those commoners who did not have any background, they even flocked to the northern frontier. Even if they were homeless, it was still better than not knowing when their heads would be chopped off. It was better to be a dog in peace than a person in chaos. This sentence was painted in blood between the other regions of the Shunwu dynasty and the northern frontier. However, the luck of these refugees was not bad. After all, the northern frontier was in the process of reform and needed a large number of people to help out everywhere. As long as they were not lazy and gluttonous, not only would they not be able to eat in the northern frontier, they would even earn more than they did in their hometowns. Most importantly, Lin Yuan had no intention of spitting out the refugees that he had eaten. Not only did he give these refugees wages and food, he also set up many new gathering places in the northern frontier to help these refugees settle down. In any case, the gathering places in the northern frontier did not need to be built with city walls. At the beginning, they only needed to build some stone and wood houses that could shelter them from the wind and rain. The amount of work was not that big. Under the condition that they were provided with food, these refugees worked hard to build houses for themselves. Of course, it was also because of the labor of these refugees that not only were the Northern Frontier Prince's mansion and the Dragon King's temple completed, even the construction of the Northern Frontier Academy, which Lin Yuan had bared his fangs to the aristocratic clans and sects to cultivate talents for himself, had been greatly improved. Originally, there were 7 cities in the northern frontier. Excluding Zhanshan City, which had been completely wiped out after the census of the population and the redistribution of housing, there were now 21 public residences in the northern frontier. The first phase of Lin Yuan's Northern Frontier Academy was to set up a headquarters in these 21 residences. When the residences were further developed in the future, the headquarters would apply for funds from the Northern Frontier Prince's mansion to set up their own branch academy. As time passed, Lin Yuan was sure that no one would reject an academy that provided free tuition, food and lodging, and even cultivation resources for those who performed well. The existence of the Northern Frontier Academy was the reason why Lin Yuan had the confidence to swallow these refugees. What did the prosperity of a land, a city, and a country depend on? It was the population. In the history of his previous world, there had once been the painful lesson of the 5 Barbarians' Rebellion. It was because the warlords of that time were fighting amongst each other, which had almost wiped out the entire population. Otherwise, how could a bunch of foreign races who had been blocked outside the grasslands have the right to enter the divine lands and strut around? However, the implementation of the Northern Frontier policy was one thing, but family matters still had to be settled. At that moment, Lin Yuan was sitting cross-legged on a soft cushion prepared by the servants of the prince's mansion. His pair of heterochromatic eyes stared coldly at Lei Fan's face, and his voice carried a hint of mockery as he laughed coldly. King of the Northern Frontier, you have calculated that this king will not be able to leave the secret realm, and so you are in a hurry to control the authority of the Northern Frontier? Seated on an armchair, Lei Fan's movements stiffened slightly as a brilliant glint flashed across his purple eyes. Raising his head, he smiled and said, Lord Demon Emperor, what are you saying? You're already in existence that's going to create a new era. How can a mere heavenly dipper realm cultivator stop your footsteps? If Lord Dragon King were to really die in the secret realm, that would be out of my expectations. Then you explain to me. All these people, how did they die? Lin Yuan shot a glance at Lei Fan, the coldness in his eyes growing even more intense, and even his voice sounded a little more forceful. Hu Yan, who was standing by the side, reached out his hand to wipe off the cold sweat on his forehead, and took a step forward to pass a white envelope into Lei Fan's hands. After that, he lowered his head and went back to his seat, looking indifferently at the two big bosses of the Northern Frontier, who controlled lightning and thunder. In his heart, he had already made up his mind that no matter what happened today, he would bury this matter in his stomach. Chapter 367. Lei Fan put down the teacup in his hand and opened the white envelope with both hands. It was a list of names. With just a quick glance, Lei Fan's entire body shook, and large amounts of cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The names on the list were not anything that could not be exposed. They were all officials who had been assigned to various positions in the Northern Frontier during this period of time to implement the new laws of the Northern Frontier. They had not been conferred titles by the Shenwu dynasty, and they were originally the 7 mayors and the various aristocratic families groomed for roles, such as housekeepers and servants. Because they had a certain level of ability, Lin Yuan had made an exception and transferred them to wear the robes of officials. They could be said to be the cornerstone of the Northern Frontier. However, this list of names was the same batch of officials that Lei Fan had used various excuses to kill in the past few days. It was not that these people had any grudges with Lei Fan, but they were Lin Yuan's most staunch supporters, and they completely followed the principle that all things were equal. After all, they had been housekeepers and had become officials today. Although their status was still far from their former masters, but at least they had the right to speak to them as equals, and did not need to kneel on the ground and call themselves servants or servants. But including Lei Fan, the 7 mayors of the past had never taken this rule seriously. After all, they were all from a privileged class, whether it was in the past or now. But if they allowed this rule to continue to develop, they would lose all their privileges sooner or later. And even some of the more outstanding grassroots would be able to climb to a position higher than theirs in the future. Taking the opportunity that Lin Yuan was trapped in the mystic realm, Lei Fan had unhesitatingly waved his butcher's knife at those staunch supporters of this rule. Although he did not do it openly, but anyone with a discerning eye would know why Lei Fan had targeted those people on the list. Of course, Lei Fan had done this because he felt that Lin Yuan would not be able to get out. Although Yan Xingqi did not have any ill feelings towards Lin Yuan, and was even very interested in the new policies that Lin Yuan had implemented, the ones who were truly implementing these new policies were still Lei Fan and the 7 others. Even if Lin Yuan had died in the mystic territory, as long as Lei Fan kept most of the new policies in place, he would still be able to gain the support of Yan Xingqi. In addition to the existence of his own Lei family bloodline, even if the Shenwu dynasty had quelled the chaos in the future, he would still be able to retain a considerable amount of authority in the Northern Frontier. Furthermore, Yan Xingqi was in existence that was on par with Lei Qiusheng. No matter if it was his foresight or his methods, no ordinary person could compare to him. No matter how extraordinary Lin Yuan was, it would be difficult for him to convince someone like Yan Xingqi. After all, as a demonic beast, Lin Yuan was a huge hidden danger in Yan Xingqi's eyes. If it wasn't for the fact that Lin Yuan was a demonic beast, based on the things that Lin Yuan had done, Yan Xingqi would have already stood behind Lin Yuan. But Lei Fan would never have thought that not only had Lin Yuan managed to convince Yan Xingqi, he had also come out so quickly. In just 2 days' time, Lin Yuan had walked out from the mystic territory. Other than his power having increased by another step, there was also an aura about him that Lei Fan had never felt before. I was the one who did it, so what? Now that things had come to this, Lei Fan could only brace himself to meet Lin Yuan's gaze and say in a deep voice, "Black Snake, although you are a demonic beast, but I must admit that you are indeed a mighty lord with great talent and bold vision. Your new policies also have many merits. But I hope that before you make your decision, you will at least consider our opinions. What do you think, that we are willing to risk our lives to help you do all these things for the northern frontier to prosper, for peace and prosperity? Go on." Lin Yuan's gaze rested on Lei Fan's face for a moment, but he did not fly into a rage immediately, but instead replied with an indifferent tone. "The 600,000 soldiers of the Northern Frontier Guard Legion wish to achieve great things, to free themselves from their current status as bumpkins, to become one of the upstart nobles of the Northern Frontier. But the laughable thing is, they are completely unaware that we, the so-called upstart nobles of the Northern Frontier, are still standing under the butcher's knife of you, the great demon emperor." Lei Fan was so angry that he started to laugh, and he continued to say, "Taking back all the privileges in our hands. How did you come up with this idea? That's equivalent to saying that we have risked our lives to make the Northern Frontier better and better. But we are the ones who are going to get worse and worse? Then I might as well let the Northern Frontier maintain its current state." Cough. Hu Yan cleared his throat, as if he wanted to say something, but when his gaze rested on the two big bosses for a moment, he let go of those little schemes in his heart, and just pretended that his throat was not feeling well, and continued to stand at the same spot. After all, the Northern Frontier Guard Legion was currently relying on these two big bosses to survive. Although the 600,000 soldiers of the Northern Frontier Guard Legion were not all Lei Fan's personal soldiers, but they were indeed trained by Li Zhongxing and Zhang Qilin under Lei Fan's command. More or less, there was still some kinship between them. Therefore, when Lei Fan ordered the Northern Frontier Guard Legion to do what he wanted, it was far more useful than the other 6 city lords. As for Lin Yuan, he was now the guardian god of the Northern Frontier, the god of fortune. In the eyes of the refugees and ordinary people, the Northern Frontier that was undergoing reform was like gold everywhere, and as long as they put in some effort, they would be able to earn riches that they would never have dared to dream of in the past. But wasn't this gold that was spread everywhere by Lin Yuan? And it was distributed by the people who made the decisions? No matter if it was without Lin Yuan or Lei Fan, the Northern Frontier Guard Legion would be greatly weakened, and might even be swallowed up by others like a piece of fat meat. Presumably these two big bosses, Hu Yan, the former city lord of Shunning City, and the current chief secretary of the Northern Frontier Guard Legion, could only stand aside and listen. "The privileges you speak of, what are you referring to? You want me to give you a large piece of land in the Northern Frontier Guard Legion, and let you build your own country, China?" Lin Yuan's snake tail swayed gently, and he said in a calm voice, "Then what's the difference between your privileges and the aristocratic families? If I were to set you as an example, what would the others think? After I've dealt with the aristocratic families and sects in the Northern Frontier Guard Legion, and then watch you all become a new aristocratic family, then what's the point of me doing all this? Or could it be that even you yourself feel that what you're doing now is completely useless?" Lei Fan was at a loss for words, not knowing how to answer Lin Yuan. Although since ancient times, it was always the new rulers who suppressed the old aristocratic families and sects, and then the new aristocratic families and sects would be formed by the new rulers, unless it was a super aristocratic family like the Qiao family. Otherwise, once there was a new ruler, the local powers would usually be swallowed up by others. But if Lin Yuan were to use this method to distribute them out, then it would mean that all the hard work they had done during this period of time would be for naught, because the aristocratic families would still not be under his control. Even if Lin Yuan were to really die in the mystic realm, Lei Fan's right to speak in the Northern Frontier Guard Legion would not reach the level he had imagined. Chapter 368. You see, you've thought it through. If we follow your train of thought, the only result you can achieve is to clear out the sects from the northern frontier. But including you, the power of the various great families will increase rapidly. Maybe you can ensure 10 or 20 years of peace and control the northern frontier within this period of time. But when you lose the momentum you have now and become a part of the northern frontier, the respect others have for you will not be the same as before. When that time comes, do you think that you, Lei Fan, who is all alone, will be able to play against those scheming foxes in the northern frontier? Or will you, Lei Fan alone, be able to go head-to-head with the Qiao family? I am indeed going to take back my privileges, not only towards the great families and the sects, but also towards all of you. No one will be able to hold any privileges in the northern frontier. Under my control, the northern frontier will always have only one voice. Do you understand? At that moment, Lin Yuan did not seem like a demonic beast, but more like a well-read strategist. It was as if Lei Fan's every move was within his calculations. Laughable. Laughable to the max. Lei Fan suddenly threw the teacup in his hand onto the floor and said coldly, Lin Yuan, you better get this straight. We are now in a cooperative relationship, and there is no need to talk about who is subordinate to whom. I admit that without the wealth you brought in, the northern frontier will be even more difficult than before. But you also have to admit that without the Northern Frontier Guard Corps under my command, you will not be able to protect the northern frontier, which is such a treasured land. Hu Yan. Although he had already expected that the two of them would shed all pretenses of cordiality, but Hu Yan had never thought that Lin Yuan's attitude would be so resolute. There was no room for negotiation, and he had directly ignored Lei Fan's grievances, as if he was not worried that Lei Fan would shed all pretenses of cordiality with him, and they would all go their separate ways. Please do as you wish. Lin Yuan stretched his back lazily, a hint of a smile finally appearing in his voice. 600,000 Northern Frontier Guard Corps. Other than those men of sacrifice from the Lei family who came with you. If you can bring more than 10,000 people with you, I will give you my head and you will have the final say in the northern frontier. You. Lin Yuan's sudden burst of confidence caused Lei Fan's heart to skip a beat. Subconsciously, he had a bad feeling about this. Why don't you take a guess? After I left the Mystery Realm, I directly mobilized the Northern Frontier Guard Army to surround the Freedom Courtyard. I didn't even have any contact with the higher-ups of the Association of the Demon Emperor. Then, who told me about your actions during this period? Lin Yuan shifted into a more comfortable position, his eyes filled with ridicule. Zhang. Qi. Lin. Lei Fan's face immediately flushed red as he gritted his teeth and spat out the name. The only people who knew about Lei Fan's actions during this period of time, other than the Demon Emperor's Association, were his trusted aides. And the only person who had been in contact with Lin Yuan recently was Zhang Qilin, who was in charge of leading the troops to surround the Freedom Yard. If there was really a mole around him, then even if Zhang Qilin wasn't the mole, he would definitely be connected to the mole somehow. If you can think of Zhang Qilin, then you should be able to think of who betrayed you, right? Oh, the word betrayed is not appropriate. It should be said that they have chosen the right path. Just as Lin Yuan's voice fell, Luo Su and Li Zhongxing strode in at the same time. Their gazes paused on Lei Fan for a moment before they knelt down on one knee and cupped their hands towards Lin Yuan, saying, Lord Dragon King, the name list we drafted during this period of time has already been sent to Sherdong's Little Inn. Before nightfall, we should be able to apprehend everyone on the name list. Luo Su's words made Lei Fan feel as if he had been electrocuted. His entire body began to tremble as he stared in disbelief at Luo Su, who was kneeling before Lin Yuan. Towards Lei Fan's actions, Lin Yuan did not have any intention to comment on it. Lei Fan was an ambitious schemer, just that his ambitions had grown to a certain extent. Especially since Lei Fan had started working with him, He had not tasted any benefits and had been suppressed by him obediently. Hence, when he knew that Lin Yuan might have met with misfortune, Lei Fan had hurriedly revealed his fangs. But it was obvious that Lei Fan's grasp of the human heart had not reached a certain level. The 600,000 guards of the Northern Frontier Guard Army had indeed respected Li Zhongxing and Zhang Qilin. But Lei Fan had forgotten that Li Zhongxing and Zhang Qilin were not the men of sacrifice and servants that Lei Qiuxing had groomed from young. They had been handpicked by Lei Qiuxing from Shen Linjun's reserve troops, the elite force that he intended to rebuild Mountain Blocking City. Even if they were loyal, it was towards Lei Qiuxing and not towards him. Moreover, after experiencing the changes that had taken place in the northern frontier, their originally simple and honest hearts naturally knew what the right path was. Hence, it was not surprising that they had chosen to serve under Lin Yuan. As for Luo Su, the prerequisite for his loyalty to Lei Fan was that Lei Fan could give him a new identity, allowing him to escape from the Xinwu dynasty's pursuit of the survivors who knew the truth behind the destruction of Mountain Blocking City. And all of this, Lin Yuan could give him. More importantly, Lin Yuan had a subordinate who could control the pseudo-infernal flames, Mo Luo. As long as Lin Yuan was willing, he could suppress the tormenting pain in Luo Su's body that was almost driving him insane. Lei Fan naturally felt that the destruction of Mountain Blocking City had something to do with Luo Su. But how could a battle between two armies be blamed on one person? Compared to Lin Yuan, who had defeated the Mountain Blocking City's garrison army, Luo Su hated Feng Tian, who was now nowhere to be found, and had degenerated into a creature of infernal flames. Both sides did not have any deep enmity with each other. In addition, they could still benefit from each other. Therefore, Luo Su submitting to Lin Yuan was something that Lei Fan should have expected. Because of a little carelessness, Lei Fan had lost everything. He did not even know that the people around him had already changed their allegiance. He still laughably thought that he could take away the Northern Frontier's garrison army with a wave of his hand, and use this as a bargaining chip to obstruct Lin Yuan's implementation of the new policies. Now that he thought about it, his actions were like digging a hole for himself and lying in it, waiting for Lin Yuan to fill in the hole. What was the consequence of obstructing the new policies? The corpses of the sects and factions were already a very obvious example. Lei Fan slumped weakly on the chair. He could not even be bothered to ask Luo Su what the name list was. There was no need to even think about it. All the secret agents and death warriors that he had placed in the northern frontier had already been thoroughly investigated by Luo Su during this period of time. In addition to the Demon Emperors Association's ability to carry out their mission, Luo Su would have already been brutally suppressed before he could even come in to report. Obstructing the new policies according to the law, you should be beheaded. Seeing that you have performed meritorious service, this king will give you 3 days. Lin Yuan took a deep breath and said slowly, 3 days later, if you are still within the northern frontier, then don't blame this king for being merciless. Chapter 369. Lin Yuan, you win. Lei Fan bit down on his lips, a sinister glint flashing across his face. The plan he had set up in the northern frontier for close to half a year had been completely destroyed because of a moment of impatience. So what if the Black Snake did not banish him? He did not even know what else he could do in the northern frontier. Actually, the future of the northern frontier is not as bad as you think. I hope that the northern frontier will get better and better, and not become a place where my words are the law. If there is an existence more outstanding than me, the ruler of the northern frontier can change hands anytime. You have fallen too quickly, and you don't even want to see the future of the northern frontier? Lin Yuan's eyelids closed slightly, and he said slowly, actually, with your abilities and the bargaining chips in your hands, there will definitely be a place for you in the northern frontier in the future. Lei Fan shrugged his shoulders and said bitterly, who knows? As his voice fell, Lei Fan strode out of the guest hall that belonged to the northern frontier duke's mansion. It was only at this moment that Lei Fan finally understood Lin Yuan's next move. He suddenly realized that the change in his mentality from the moment he realized that Lin Yuan might not be able to walk out of the mystic realm was also within Lin Yuan's expectations. The name list that Lin Yuan had handed over to him, and himself, were actually just pieces that Lin Yuan had prepared to abandon. If he had continued to endure silently, Lin Yuan would have continued to steadily nibble away at the powers of the sects, forcing them to rebel bit by bit. Although the pace would be much slower, but the pace would be much steadier. And by choosing to make things difficult for him, he had fallen right into another of Lin Yuan's plans. The current situation was still within Lin Yuan's expectations. Within 3 days, the news of Wang Rant's sudden death in the Northern Frontier Duke's mansion would spread out from the Northern Frontier Duke's mansion. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that Lin Yuan had dealt with Lei Fan internally. With his status and position, he was a very good piece to be abandoned. At the same time, he could also stabilize the hearts of the people from the various sects, allowing those sects who were in a constant state of panic to calm down and feel that everything that had happened before was all part of Lei Fan's plan. It was because of Lei Fan's recklessness that he had disrupted Lin Yuan's plans, and had exposed some of his trump cards like the Qiao family, which was why he had been dealt with internally by Lin Yuan. Thinking of this point, those sects and forces who had Void Realm cultivators holding the fort would not be in a hurry to migrate, giving Lin Yuan another chance to boil the frog in warm water. After all, there was only one chess piece like Lei Fan from the start to the end. Counting the first day till now, in less than 3 days, the number of sects and forces disciples who had been killed was close to 100,000. Such a tragedy would not happen again. Because the next time Lin Yuan bared his fangs, those sects and forces who were slow to react should not even dream of running away. After Lei Fan's figure had disappeared from sight, Lin Yuan then slowly closed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "There are quite a number of newly established colonies. Luo Su, pick one yourself. I don't care what your administrative strategy is like, you just have to remember what I want you to do next. The aristocratic families must be weakened as much as possible, and the academy must be set up as soon as possible. As for the problem of the refugees, those who can stay should all stay. For those who can't stay, don't let them think that the northern frontier is not a good place to be. Perhaps when those people return to their hometowns and ask about the northern frontier, they might be able to bring us more people." Yes. Luo Su bowed slightly, bowed to Lin Yuan, and then slowly exited the reception room. In addition, Hu Yan prepared to take over the position of the king of the northern frontier. The Northern Frontier Guard Corps will be expanded to 1 million men, and officially renamed as the Northern Battlefront Army, with full authority handed over to Zhang Qilin. In addition, Li Zhongxing will transfer 100,000 men from the Northern Frontier Guard Corps as the backbone to set up a new army of 3 million men, named as the Southern Expedition. The manpower can be slowly recruited, but for now, it is enough to maintain the security of the Northern Frontier. Now there are still many projects in the Northern Frontier that require manpower, so don't be overly militaristic. When Lin Yuan reached this point, he paused for a moment, narrowed his eyes and said, "In addition, after you take over the position of the king of the Northern Frontier, I will allow you to set up a Royal Guard Corps that will only listen to your orders. It will be 100,000 men, and you will be able to decide the source of the soldiers yourself. As for the military officers, you can completely appoint them yourself. There is only one request, and that is, without my order, this Royal Guard Corps is not allowed to step out of Shunning City." "Yes." Hu Yan's body suddenly tensed up, and he replied loudly. Towards the direction of Lin Yuan's new expansion of the Royal Guard Corps, Hu Yan suddenly felt a chill crawl up his spine. Back then, when Lin Yuan had taken the position of king of the Northern Frontier from him and handed it over to Lei Fan, he must have already calculated that sooner or later, Lei Fan's wild ambitions would erupt. Even though Lei Fan was in control of the Northern Frontier Guard Corps, Lin Yuan had never once suggested for Lei Fan to set up a Royal Guard Corps. As for completely taking control of the Northern Frontier Guard Corps, that was just a joke. The Northern Frontier Guard Corps, with the exception of Li Zhongxing and the others that Lei Fan had brought along, were all from the Northern Frontier. Now that Lin Yuan's every move and action was for the good of the Northern Frontier Guard Corps, they could not wait to be grateful to him. How could they possibly follow Lei Fan and betray Lin Yuan, just because of a little bit of kindness. A sense of sorrow suddenly rose up in Hu Yan's heart. Immediately, Lin Yuan seemed to have sensed something as he slowly raised his head and said in a deep voice, Lei Fan's ending today is indeed due to this king's scheming. But you cannot deny that if he had kept his wild ambitions in check, he would not have ended up in such a state today. Compared to him, I have already given you a lot of trust. Yes, your subordinate understands. Your subordinate will definitely do his best to work for the Demon Emperor. Hu Yan lowered his head, completely hiding the sorrow and worry in his eyes. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey, this was the best way to do it. With Lei Fan as an example, even if someone forced him to betray Lin Yuan in the future, he would have to consider whether Lin Yuan had any means to counter him. Would his trusted aides be like Li Zhongxing and Luo Su, who seemed to be acting as usual but had in fact already thrown their lot in with Lin Yuan's subordinates? Let's call it a day. This king is tired. Lin Yuan stretched his body once again, and his tone had already revealed a hint of laziness. He had indeed prepared a backup plan, but that was only a countermeasure if Lei Fan could no longer endure. Lei Fan's sudden attack on the forces of the sects had indeed disrupted Lin Yuan's plans. He had spent an entire morning reviewing Lei Fan's overall plan, before coming up with a series of follow-up plans. And coming to Shunning City to cause trouble for Lei Fan was indeed a matter that had exhausted his mind. Wait, Demon Emperor. Li Zhongxing, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. Lin Yuan and Hu Yan simultaneously cast their gazes onto Li Zhongxing's face. Li Zhongxing pondered for a moment before he slowly said, the lieutenant who had previously infiltrated Xiong Wu's army to assassinate Su Wu, and those who had cooperated with him have been detained by us in Shunning City for a period of time. You see. Chapter 370. Lin Yuan was slightly stunned. He had almost forgotten that when the Shengwu dynasty sent an army to attack the northern frontier, someone was behind the scenes, intending to destroy the entire northern frontier. But now that he thought about it, more than 2 months had passed, and those guys had endured for so long. Even Luo Su couldn't force them to open their mouths and reveal who the mastermind behind them was. It seemed that the force behind these people had already taught them fear before sending them here. They knew that once they opened their mouths, they would definitely not end well. That was why they could endure for so long. Then let's go and see what kind of surprise he can bring us. Lin Yuan also put away his laziness, and a cold light flashed in his heterochromatic eyes. A force lurking in the dark, constantly thinking about destroying the northern frontier. Lin Yuan didn't want to provoke such a poisonous snake, but the other party had come to him. If Lin Yuan didn't fight back, these guys would play tricks next time. Half an hour later, under the lead of Li Zhongxing, Lin Yuan came to the bosses of Shunning City. The prison, which had been renovated, was more than 10 times stronger than before. Even the various shackles on the prisoners detained here were made of special metal, which could suppress the spiritual qi in the body of the cultivators. Even if a strong heavenly strength realm expert was put on such shackles, it would be a blessing from the ancestors if they could only exert 30% of their strength. What was more, almost all the cultivators detained here were in the airborne realm. Under the suppression of such special metal, not only could they not exert their strength, but they also had to mobilize their spiritual qi to resist the suppression. Except for the fact that their bodies had been tempered to be more durable, they were even worse than ordinary people. Lin Yuan followed Li Zhongxing through the prison. Almost every cell had more than a dozen prisoners. After all, the new laws of the northern frontier were adapted by Lin Yuan from his previous life. In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, most cultivators belonged to the kind that should be cut into pieces. Therefore, it was not strange that the prison was full of people. If the prison was empty, Lin Yuan would find it strange. The environment of this place is too good. Remember to fix it when you renovate it next time. The cell in the corner ahead is blocking my view. I'll have to rebuild it next time. And, Lin Yuan suggested as they walked. The prisoners nearby, who heard Lin Yuan's suggestions, looked at him as if he was looking at a devil. After all, most of them did not commit capital crimes. At most, they would be detained for 10 days to half a month before being released. Although life here was a little boring, at least they had food and accommodation. Moreover, the environment and food were not bad. However, if he were to follow the Black Snake's suggestion, it would not be as simple as just being bored in jail. Lin Yuan nodded in satisfaction when he saw the prisoners around him looking at him, as though he was a devil. He was very satisfied with the attitude of these prisoners. After all, these people were imprisoned to learn their lesson. In the end, this prison was almost like an inn. Apart from sleeping in shared bunks, everything else could be used as a guest room. How could this work? A place like a prison should be a little more dangerous. After people came here once, they would not dare to come again. Li Zhongxing led the way while responding to Lin Yuan. At the same time, his gaze fell on the prison warden. The prison warden immediately nodded and expressed that he would definitely renovate this place. After all, Li Zhongxing was only detaining people here. The prison was not under his control. Later, the prison warden would still have to report to the higher-ups, and then the higher-ups would allocate funds to rebuild the prison. Soon, the group arrived at the few cells in the deepest part of the prison. Compared to the shared bunks at the outermost area, the cells in the deepest part of the prison were more interesting. Each of them was a single room, and they were separated by a thick iron door. Unless someone opened the door from the outside, the soundproofing effect was excellent. The prison warden opened one of the iron doors, and then stood outside respectfully. Small people had their own rules of survival. The Black Water Dragon King and the commander of the Northern Frontier Guard Army were interrogating prisoners. Their backgrounds were definitely not simple. Even if such a conversation could make him rich, he did not have the guts to go in and listen in. There were no windows in the cell. Only when the iron door was opened would some light penetrate in. Looking at the pitch-black interior of the cell, Lin Yuan secretly gave Luo Su a thumbs up in his heart. This guy was very knowledgeable. How terrifying was the darkness that was completely invisible to the naked eye. Lin Yuan had experienced it once in the Sumeru world of the Fire Kirin. In such an environment, it was impossible to notice the passage of time. If it were not for someone delivering 3 meals a day to this guy, perhaps these 2 months would be easily mistaken by him for more than 10 years. In addition, such an environment could easily break down a person's psychological defense. Even if he stubbornly refused to open his mouth, it was easy to suffer from various psychological diseases, causing his spirit to become weaker and more sensitive. To a certain extent, as long as someone was willing to talk to him, he would be happy for most of the day. Even if the other party was interrogating him, he would say everything he knew without holding back, for fear that this hard-won conversation would suddenly end. Soon, Lin Yuan saw a man suspended in midair by 4 chains. It was the young lieutenant that Lin Yuan had met before. However, compared to his previous high-spirited appearance, the young lieutenant now looked like he had lost 20 to 30 pounds, as if he was only skin and bones. His eye sockets were sunken, and there were dark circles under his eyes. It looked like he had not had a good rest for a long time. But thinking about it, who could easily fall asleep while suspended in midair? Lin Yuan glanced at Li Zhongxing. The latter consciously stepped out of the cell, and then took the cell key from the prison warden. He watched the prison warden and his 2 attendants leave before reaching out to close the cell door for Lin Yuan. He stood at the door like a guard, waiting for the results of the interrogation. The cell returned to darkness once again. Lin Yuan's gaze paused on the young lieutenant's face for a moment, and then he said, "Tell me, what are you going to tell me? Let's talk about vilifying me first. If you don't give me enough information or give me false information, I can guarantee that your life will be 100 times worse than it is now. But if you give me useful information, I will slowly improve your living environment. If the information you give me is valuable enough, it is not impossible for me to let you go." It seemed that because he had not spoken for a long time, the young lieutenant opened his mouth, but only a few syllables came out. Chapter 371. Lin Yuan was not in a hurry. He simply coiled his body and waited quietly. This kid had endured for such a long time, and was still unwilling to confess. Clearly, he still harbored a certain amount of hope. He believed that the faction behind him would think of a way to save them, or send someone in to give them a quick death, so that they would not have to continue facing Luo Su's endless torture methods. But after such a long time, there was still no movement from the outside. Therefore, this kid believed that Lin Yuan had the ability to protect him. Thus, all of his stubbornness was meaningless. He might as well tell the truth, and then secretly find a small job under Lin Yuan. At the very least, he would be able to live like a normal person. Ether Society. The young lieutenant swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said a dry name. Then there was another period of silence. After about 10 minutes, as if he had found the correct way to pronounce the name, the young lieutenant smiled bitterly and said to Lin Yuan, "Our organization is called the Ether Society. How do I describe it? It's similar to an organization like a business alliance. However, we don't do any serious business. To put it in a small way, we sell salt and cigarettes. To put it in a big way, we do almost any business in the Shenwu dynasty that doesn't require capital. As long as we reach a certain scale, we either join the Ether Society or be exterminated." Lin Yuan nodded his head. This Ether Society was like an organization like the Yamaguchi Gumi in his previous life. Under a unified name, they governed most of the gray and black businesses under the Shenwu dynasty. The members of their organization might not have much of a say in the various factions under their name, but when the entire organization's power was combined, it was still quite frightening. But very quickly, Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and asked without much emotion, "But what does the Ether Society you speak of have to do with my northern frontier? Today, there is no business in the northern frontier that doesn't require capital. Even if there is no need for your Ether Society to do anything. I will quickly wipe out those bandits and rogues. Give me some water." The young lieutenant shook his body, as if he was trying to adjust to a more comfortable position. After a while he said, "Of course, there was no business in the northern frontier that the Ether Association was interested in. This place is remote and cold to begin with. In addition, there was the incident with Ma Jun in the past. So, no one dares to do anything that is not profitable to begin with." Saying this, the young lieutenant opened his mouth and drank a ball of water that Lin Yuan had condensed using water element spiritual qi. He let out a long breath and continued, "But the northern frontier is different now. Right now, the northern frontier is filled with gold. It would be strange if the Ether Society didn't think of ways to come in and make a fortune. However, we have been ordered to infiltrate the northern frontier. Our only goal is to destroy your rule in the northern frontier. Then the Ether Association will send a core member to take over the northern frontier. After all, the Fey business that you monopolize can bring in huge profits, so..." Lin Yuan didn't react this time. In his heart, his evaluation of the Ether Association had dropped by a level. If the Ether Association was really envious of the Fey business monopoly, then the correct choice should be to show enough goodwill to Lin Yuan, and take out enough capital to join them, and make a fortune together with Lin Yuan. They shouldn't grit their teeth and defeat Lin Yuan before taking over the northern frontier. Firstly, it was impossible for people like Lei Qiuxing and Zhang Xiu to not know about the Ether Association. It was just that they didn't make a move on the Ether Association due to various reasons. However, that was the basic situation. Once the Ether Association took control of a realm, those bandits that had once roared in the mountains and forests would transform into a professional army that wasn't much weaker than a regular army. At that time, they would be in a situation where they couldn't get rid of their tail. At this juncture, Lei Qiuxing would definitely prioritize eliminating a hidden danger like the Ether Association. Secondly, the northern frontier could indeed make use of the geographical advantage to monopolize the Fey business. However, after the initial capital accumulation stage, Lin Yuan had started to consciously control the Fey's price, and the market was gradually warming up. This money was really easy to earn, but it was also really hot. Those aristocratic families, sects, and high-ranking officials had no choice but to suffer this loss. If you didn't think of a way to make them recover, they would make you suffer 10 times the loss sooner or later. Thirdly, the reason why the northern frontier could become a treasure bowl was because of Lin Yuan's identity as a demonic beast. Without Lin Yuan's guarantee, how many orders would the human caravans dare to cross the Hengduan mountain range to conduct cross-border transactions? Without the backing of the other 6 dynasties' goods, just the Fei alone wouldn't be able to protect the northern frontier's market. After all, Feis were good, but not everyone could afford them. Feis might be selling well now, but that was only because merchants and aristocratic families were hoarding their goods. There were very few people who actually bought them for their own cultivation. The upper echelons of the Ether Society aren't that stupid, right? Tell me the details. Lin Yuan sat cross-legged, his heterochromatic eyes sizing up the young lieutenant's face. He suddenly realized that the Ether Society was able to reach such a scale without being destroyed by Zhang Xiao. The decision-makers were definitely not to be trifled with. If they didn't have a complete plan, they wouldn't easily have the intention to kill Lin Yuan, much less be prepared to directly destroy the northern frontier. Lord Shifter Emperor, you should know that the northern frontier was originally the base of the Jiao clan's remnants. Because this place is connected to the Hengduan mountain range, it ensured that the Jiao clan's remnants were able to obtain sufficient supplies from the Hengduan mountain range, and thus had the capital to recruit troops. After the Shifter Emperor appeared, the Jiao clan's remnants weren't able to successfully protect their territory in the northern frontier. Just this point alone is enough to make many of the Jiao clan's remnants go crazy. Therefore, the Ether Society's main purpose in taking action against Lord Shifter Emperor at this time is to make the Jiao clan's remnants take the blame. According to the original plan, regardless of whether it succeeds or not, the northern frontier will be greatly impacted. Even if you don't die in this turmoil, your vitality will be greatly damaged. When the time comes for the upper echelons of the Ether Society to appear and discuss with you some issues related to the division of benefits, you will then be more submissive to them. The young lieutenant added his own words, explaining the problem that Lin Yuan hadn't thought through before. To the Ether Society, this was of course a rare opportunity. As long as they did it, they would be able to more or less squeeze out enough benefits from Lin Yuan or Beijing. Even if they failed, there would be a group of Jiao clan's remnants who were destined to withdraw from the stage to take the blame for them. Moreover, it would be the kind of blame that they wouldn't even be able to turn over. After all, during this period of time, regardless of whether it was the style or motive of the Jiao clan's remnants, it perfectly matched the identity of the mastermind behind this matter. Chapter 372. Back then, when Lin Yuan found out that the other party wanted to destroy the northern frontier, the first thing he suspected was the surviving members of the Jiao clan, who had almost gone crazy. Fortunately, Lin Yuan was not an arbitrary and rash person. After detaining these people who were responsible for this operation, there was indeed a different harvest. The Ether Society's method of slandering was quite brilliant. If they had really succeeded, the surviving members of the Jiao clan would not be able to defend themselves. However, the upper echelons of the Ether Society probably did not expect that before their plan had officially started, it had already been foiled by Lin Yuan, who had sensed that something was wrong. Even a large group of people who carried out the operation had been killed or injured. Those who were still alive were all locked up in these few dark prison cells where they could not see the light of day. It was hard to say if the Ether Society would do anything else after this. After all, the northern frontier now had a real name system. Everyone who entered the northern frontier would be given a card with their name and serial number, representing their legal identity in the northern frontier. In order to receive this card, information such as name, place of birth, number of family members, and so on had to be checked by the official in charge of the northern frontier. After that, the Demonic Emperors Association would naturally monitor the new people who entered the northern frontier. Only after the other comrades had found a way to verify the new people's identity would the monitoring be slightly relaxed. For the Demonic Emperors Association was now like a sleepless eye, staring fixedly at the movements of the northern frontier. Of course, not to mention these new refugees who wanted to stir up trouble. Even the natives of the northern frontier, who had lived in the northern frontier for many years and knew each other well, did not gain the complete trust of the Demonic Emperors Association. Every few days, They would compile a person's recent actions and carefully consider whether they could be a spy. Although this method consumed a lot of manpower and resources, for a new organization like the Demonic Emperors Association, it was the only method they could use to screen out the identities of spies. It was not that Lin Yuan had ordered them to do this. It was just that the members of the Demonic Emperors Association were very clear that the reason they could become a first-rate organization in the Northern Frontier, that had replaced the Demon Slayer Guild in the Northern Frontier, while under the shadow of the shadows, was all because of Lin Yuan's significance to the Northern Frontier. If Lin Yuan were to fall from power, they would quickly become a target of scorn, and it would be extremely difficult for them to make a comeback. Therefore, even if Lin Yuan did not instruct them to do many things, the Demonic Emperors Association would still carry out their tasks willingly. Therefore, the secret agents of the various major factions all hated the Demonic Emperors Association to death, but none of them could come up with a plan to avoid the attention of the Demonic Emperors Association. This was the reason why the members of the Ether Society could survive until today. If it was not for the fact that the members of the Ether Society could not enter at all, or that they could not cause any trouble even if they entered, from the style of the Ether Society, as long as these losers existed, the possibility of them leaking the secrets of the Ether Society would be greater. Therefore, they would have long sent assassins to silence them. Lin Yuan was silent for a moment, and then suddenly said, "The information you gave is very interesting, but before I think of a way to determine whether it is true or not, you still won't have any special privileges. You won't even be able to leave this cell for a short period of time to take a breather. You should be able to guess that I am doing this to protect your personal safety. I believe you can understand. However, the things you have told me are only slightly interesting. It is enough to protect your life, but as for the rest..." Haha. Lin Yuan's words were like a bucket of cold water being poured over his head. After drinking a mouthful of water, and finally finding a target to talk to, the young lieutenant's face, which had recovered a bit of color, was once again ghastly pale. There was almost no color in his face. The last trace of hope in his heart was dispelled. Although he spoke a lot, the caution in his bones still existed. Other than implicating the existence of the Ether Society, almost everything he said was things that Lin Yuan already knew. This black snake was indeed not an ordinary demonic beast. It was not so easy to fool. The young lieutenant sighed inwardly. He looked at the black snake who was about to get up and leave. He hesitated for a moment before opening his mouth and bellowing, "I'm just a member of the Ether Association. Although my status isn't low, I'm not much better than those bandit leaders who are scattered around. Therefore, I don't know much about confidential information." Lin Yuan, who had just turned around, stopped. A hint of cunning flashed through his heterochromatic eyes. He wanted to use a little work in information that was already known in exchange for freedom. Did he really think he was an idiot? The Ether Society is not thinking of occupying the Northern Frontier on a whim. According to what I know, the higher-ups of the Ether Society have already contacted a rather large clan in the Hengduan Mountains. Once you are dealt with, this clan will quickly accept the territory you left behind. Other than not necessarily being recognized by the Shenwu dynasty, they can guarantee that the Northern Frontier will be the same as the Northern Frontier in the future. I do not know what kind of existence this demonic beast clan is. With my authority, I do not have the right to look into it. However, I know who knows the specific information. Give me a chance, I can help you scrape him out. The young lieutenant roared at the top of his lungs. His originally pale face flushed red. Although he had been locked up in a sealed cell during this period of time, for someone as young as him to be able to have a place in the Ether Society, he was naturally not an ordinary person. Even if he had not seen it with his own eyes, he was certain that the Northern Frontier had entered a stage of rapid development. Today he was the first to speak. Regardless of whether Lin Yuan was free or not, he had to come and take a look. However, if he were to miss this opportunity, he did not know when he would be able to see Lin Yuan again. "Are you sure that the person you're looking for is still at the Northern Frontier?" Lin Yuan stopped in his tracks and turned his head to look at the young lieutenant. The young lieutenant shook his head dejectedly and said, This is the habit of the Ether Society. Before the operation is carried out, they will definitely arrange for a member of the upper echelon to hide near the mission location. The role of this member of the upper echelon is to survey the entire situation and report the steps of us, the frontline operatives, to the Ether Society at any time. He will also discuss with the other members of the upper echelon and constantly modify and supplement our plans. At this point he muttered somewhat unconfidently, I don't know him. It's just that I know what he looks like by chance. Furthermore, I only know that such a person exists. It's unknown whether he's still living in the same place as before, or whether he's already left the northern frontier. I can only say that I'll try my best to find him. Lin Yuan muttered to himself for a moment. His heterochromatic eyes flashed with a thoughtful look. He lowered his voice and said, I don't know what you're planning, but I'll only give you this one chance. If you play any tricks with me, I can guarantee that your end will be much more miserable than it is now. Chapter 373. Almost all the sects in the northern frontier had been wiped out. Only the sect of the Blood Divine, the Waning Moon House, and the Green Lotus Sword sect, which had Kongming realm cultivators in charge, had not been troubled by the Northern Frontier Guard army. However, these so-called three sects were also worried about Lin Yuan, who had suddenly shed all pretense of cordiality. He even dared to provoke the Freedom Courtyard, which had three Kongming realm cultivators in charge. Did that black snake really put them in his eyes? Before the representatives of the three sects could come up with a plan, a few pieces of news that shook the northern frontier were released from the northern frontier prince's mansion. Immediately, the Kongming realm cultivators of the three sects were stunned. Lei Fan, the king of the northern frontier, who had previously swept through the sects in the northern frontier with bloody means, was rumored to have contracted a strange disease. All the famous doctors in the northern frontier were unable to cure him, and he unfortunately passed away in the early hours of this morning. Because Lei Fan did not have any children, the northern frontier king's position was taken over by Hu Yan, who had originally assisted Lei Fan in implementing the new policies in the northern frontier. Regarding this, the Shunwu dynasty did not have any objections. In order to stabilize the situation in the northern frontier, not only did they redraft the imperial edict according to the wishes of the internal departments of the northern frontier, they even specially sent a lot of money to reward the new king of the northern frontier. Compared to the turmoil in other areas, the entire northern frontier prince's mansion appeared to be calm. The remaining 5 city lords who originally had the strength and qualifications to compete for the throne all maintained their silence, as if they did not have any objections to the sudden change of their superior. Very quickly someone understood. Ever since Lei Fan ascended the throne of the northern frontier, he had always been Lin Yuan's chess piece. The entire operation of the northern frontier depended on Lin Yuan's mood. Furthermore, Lin Yuan had entered the secret realm and was besieged by the cultivators of various sections. This undoubtedly gave Lei Fan the hope of replacing Lin Yuan. Hence, under the circumstances where he had not ascertained whether Lin Yuan was dead or alive, Lei Fan had taken over the command of the northern frontier without any hesitation. Furthermore, he had ignored Lin Yuan's earlier preparations and directly started a war with the sections. Through such means, not only had he reduced the influence of the sects in the northern frontier prince's mansion, he had even found an excuse to purge a large number of people who did not agree with Lei Fan's political views within the northern frontier prince's mansion. The current situation was going well, but Lin Yuan had exceeded everyone's expectations. He had actually survived the besiegement of several Heaven Realm experts, and had even become the final victor of the battle in the secret realm. After returning to the northern frontier, the first thing Lin Yuan did was to utilize the power of the aristocratic families and the Demon Emperor's Association to fix some of the loopholes in Lei Fan's plan. Furthermore, he had also swiftly pulled out the disobedient puppet Lei Fan. The cause and effect of the change in ownership of the northern frontier prince's mansion was quickly understood by everyone. It was only at this moment that the leaders of the 3 great sects could finally heave a sigh of relief. After all, although Lei Fan's previous outburst had seemed fierce, But in their eyes he was more or less a clown. If not for Lin Yuan and the aristocratic families entering the fray, the final result would be Lei Fan purging all the sects below the second rate. Not only would this not cause the sects in the Northern Frontier Prince's Mansion to be completely defeated, the various sects in the Northern Frontier Prince's Mansion would be able to quickly swallow up the losers and raise their own strength to a higher level. Furthermore, the various sects would even raise their vigilance and unite to resist the Northern Frontier Prince's Mansion, putting aside Lei Fan the loser. The more important news was, Lin Yuan was going to expand the army. The expansion of the Northern Frontier Guard Army, due to the increase in the number of human settlements in the Northern Frontier, was not a surprise to anyone. Although the quota of 400,000 seemed to be quite a lot, but in actual fact, they were spread out among the various settlements in the Northern Frontier. Once a battle broke out in a certain area, the expanded Northern Frontier Guard Army would immediately fall into a predicament of insufficient manpower. What really attracted everyone's attention was the newly established Southern Expedition Army. With a quota of 3 million, even if they were all new recruits who had never been to the battlefield before, after a little bit of training, they would become a force that would not lose out to the Xiongwu army. What was more important was the name of this army. This black snake still could not hold back, and was going to make a move against the south? However, this matter was obviously not within the consideration of Lei Qiuxing, Zhang Xiu, and the others. After all, the Southern Frontier Army had just begun to prepare. And according to the information that the embroidered uniform guard had sent over from the Northern Frontier, the recruitment of the Southern Expedition Army was extremely slow. It was obvious that they did not plan to use it in the near future. Lin Yuan had not even conquered the Northern Frontier yet. If they rashly pushed the battle line to other areas in the south, perhaps Lin Yuan would not even be able to protect the Northern Frontier. In addition, the Northern Frontier was still under construction and needed a large amount of labor. If they recruited all the young and middle-aged men into the army, it would be tantamount to going against Lin Yuan's original intentions. Moreover, the Northern Frontier attracted refugees because there was no war in the Northern Frontier. Once the flames of war started in the Northern Frontier, this reformed land would no longer be attractive to those who had lost their homes because of the war. However, after Lin Yuan returned to the Northern Frontier, most people began to let down their guard against the Northern Frontier. After all, from their point of view, the Northern Frontier would definitely be extremely powerful in the future. But now, the Northern Frontier was like a rundown house. Almost the entire roof was broken. While Lin Yuan was repairing it, he had broken even more tiles. By the time Lin Yuan was ready to conquer the world, the Shimwu dynasty would have already settled its internal and external troubles. At the same time, Shimwu dynasty, inner city of the imperial capital, imperial study. Is this black snake threatening me? Lei Qiuxing swept away the memorials in front of him that seemed to be relaying information about the Northern Frontier. He leaned weakly on the chair. He was very clear about what Lin Yuan meant by creating a southern expedition in name only. Once he took advantage of the time when the Northern Frontier Prince's Mansion and the sects had a falling out to support the sects, or if he personally made some small moves in the Northern Frontier, this army would quickly condense into the strongest fist in the Northern Frontier. Then it would ruthlessly strike the Shimwu dynasty. Your Majesty, the Northern Frontier's problem is not small, but it is not big either. Zhang Xiu bowed and said in a deep voice, "The Northern Frontier's situation is similar to ours. We have to settle our internal and external troubles. Under the reform, the Northern Frontier has also made countless enemies. The sects and aristocratic families are all thorns in his side. At this time, if we still want to obstruct each other, the result will only be mutual destruction." Mutual destruction? That black snake has already grown to such an extent? Lei Qiuxing gently chewed on the words mutual destruction. The smile at the corner of his mouth was somewhat bitter. A trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, "Haven't the envoys of the Frost Mirror dynasty and the Qingjiang dynasty already entered the imperial capital? Hurry up and arrange for me to meet with them. I want to see how big a piece of meat the old barbarian and the newly ascended brat want to bite off from me." Chapter 374. In the Hengduan Mountains, in the nest that Lin Yuan had chosen at the beginning, the black flood dragon's body was soaked in the lake water, and its head was casually placed on the shore. Lin Yuan's pair of different colored eyes swept across the faces of the people in front of him. He remained silent and did not speak first. Hu Yan represented the northern frontier prince's mansion. Shi Dong represented the association of the demon emperor, Kagura represented the demi-humans, and Xia Xiyu represented the sinners. Now that two of the three major forces under Lin Yuan's command had come, Lin Li's faction had also chosen their own representatives. Xia Xiyu played with the dagger in his hand and said coldly, "Although the sects in the northern frontier have relaxed their vigilance, those who are really smart have already begun to transfer their assets and are preparing to move to the south. After all, these major sects will send many disciples to different places to establish subsects every year in order to prevent this day from coming. I personally suggest that we take action against those forces that we can afford to offend as soon as possible. We can't let them escape just like that." "I object." Hu Yan glanced at Xia Xiyu and said expressionlessly, "The sects in the northern frontier are willing to withdraw themselves. This is the best situation for us now. According to reliable sources, the Qingjiang dynasty and the Frost Mirror dynasty have both sent envoys to the imperial capital not long ago. If I'm not wrong, the three dynasties should soon stop fighting and make peace. At this time, if we continue to wear down our own strength, it will be equivalent to giving the Shenwu dynasty a chance to eliminate us." The sinners were a force that had been used and suppressed by the Shenwu dynasty. Once there was a chance to bite the Shenwu dynasty, they would definitely not miss it. The northern frontier prince's mansion represented by Hu Yan used to be officials of the Shenwu dynasty. They were born with a sense of awe towards the Shenwu dynasty. Therefore, the two sides formed two extremes at the beginning of the meeting. "You can't say that." Shi Dong looked left and right. Seeing that Kagura had no intention to speak, he could only brace himself and say, "The two dynasties have already swallowed a lot of the Shenwu dynasty's territory. The outcome of this peace talk will not be good no matter what. Even if they are willing to return a part of the Shenwu dynasty's territory, they will definitely not let those people go back. This is obviously a result that Lei Qiuxing cannot accept. I think Lei Qiuxing will not agree to the peace talk." At this point, Shi Dong paused. Seeing that Xia Xiyu and Hu Yan had no intention to speak, he continued, "However, it is true that the Shenwu dynasty is about to walk out of its predicament. The strength of the northern frontier is more than enough to protect itself. However, if there is another massacre like the one led by Lei Fan, we may become the next target of the Shenwu dynasty." Shi Dong's words were completely to smooth things over. He did not want to offend anyone. On one hand, he agreed with Xia Xiyu's idea of exterminating the sections. On the other hand, he said that if the northern frontier suffered too many losses, it would attract the Shenwu dynasty's attack. The fox girl Kagura moved her furry ears and said lazily, "What's the use of saying so much? The final decision is not the demon emperor. If you are arguing here, why don't you think of ways to convince the demon emperor to agree with your point of view?" As her voice fell, everyone's eyes fell on Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan raised his eyelids and swept his gaze across everyone's faces. He said calmly, "It's a good thing that the sects are willing to leave. We don't have to exterminate them. However, we can't let them go just like that. Hu Yan, bring the northern battlefront army and set up a checkpoint at the northern frontier. If the sects want to leave the northern frontier, they will have to obediently hand over the toll. Otherwise, we will directly suppress them. It's fine even if you are anxious." "Yes." Hu Yan helplessly clasped his hands at Lin Yuan. He didn't want to have any more conflicts with the sections. However, obviously, except for him, no one here wanted to let the sects go just like that. Lin Yuan asked him to take charge of this matter to prevent Xia Xiyu from deliberately adding fuel to the fire. If the sects saw that they had no chance to leave safely, they would still have to turn around and fight to the death. "Xia Xiyu, don't look so bad. I have other things for you to do. Go gather your men and wait for my order in Shunning City. Once you receive my message, kill them all. Don't worry about where they are or what their background is." Lin Yuan's eyes paused on Xia Xiyu for a while. He slightly closed his eyes and continued. Of course, remember to pay attention to Hu Yan's situation. If the sects want to fight to the death, the Northern Battlefront Army may not be able to come in time. You should be ready to lead your men to fight for me. Got it. Xia Xiyu put the dagger in his sleeve and stood up to bow to Lin Yuan. As for Kagura, I asked you to contact the nearby demi-human tribes with Shaoan. According to Shaoan's report, there aren't many demi-human tribes that are willing to follow us. Is that right? After arranging Xia Xiyu and Hu Yan, Lin Yuan's eyes fell on Kagura. This fox girl hadn't been in the association of the Shifter Emperor for a long time. However, in the demi-human faction, she quickly suppressed the veteran Xiao En and others, and became one of the representatives of the demi-human faction. Whether it was strength or means, she was the best. Naturally, Lin Yuan entrusted her with important tasks. Kagura slightly nodded. Her gentle face showed a touch of seriousness. She said, Shifter Emperor, the demi-human tribes used to follow the orders of the Xinwu dynasty. Many of them are related to the remnants of the Jiu family. These two forces don't have a good relationship with us. Therefore, the matter of incorporating the demi-human tribes is progressing slowly. I need more time. There's no time. Lin Yuan shook his head and sighed. If I'm not wrong, there will be turmoil in the Hengduan mountain range recently. Even my position in the northern frontier will be threatened. At this time, what I need is a force that can quickly enter the battlefield, not a group of ancestors that I have to carefully serve. Kagura was slightly stunned. However, she soon understood Lin Yuan's meaning. She bowed and said, Understood. I will do as Shifter Emperor instructed. It's almost time to end the meeting. Sherdong, your task is the easiest, but also the most difficult. I don't care what means you use. Keep a close eye on the progress of the peace talks between the Xinwu dynasty and the two empires. Once they sign the treaty, I want to get first-hand information to adjust the next round of strategic deployment. If there's a problem on your side, it will be difficult for the others to carry out their work. Lin Yuan cleared his throat and finally looked at Sherdong, who was trying to smooth things over. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone stared at Sherdong with dangerous eyes. After all, the speed at which the Xinwu dynasty suppressed the internal strife determined how long they could be arrogant. Therefore, Sherdong's information must not be wrong. Chapter 375. After the representatives of the various factions left, Lin Yuan climbed out of the lake, shook off the water on his body, and said, You've been watching from the side for so long. Do you have something to say to me? Flames surged, and Jiu Xian's figure slowly appeared in Lin Yuan's line of sight. After a while, Jiu Xian took a deep breath with an intoxicated expression. He smiled and said, Kid, you are really capable. This is obviously the Hengduan mountain range's monster forest with the weakest spirit qi. You actually found such a treasure land with rich spirit qi in the depths of the Hengduan mountain range. Lin Yuan's mouth twitched, but he didn't reply. The green leaf water lotus was a sacred flower that could allow people to ascend to the heavens. Aside from the fact that it took a long time to grow, it also had a rather high requirement for spiritual energy. Unfortunately, the spiritual energy in this area wasn't very dense, so the green leaf water lotus consciously gathered the surrounding spiritual energy during its growth. This was why the spiritual energy in this area was abnormally dense. If the green leaf water lotus continued to grow, the spiritual energy in this area would become even denser, and the demonic beasts that cultivated here would also become stronger. However, the green leaf lotus was still a seed and didn't show any signs. Thus, no one would think that a saint-grade spirit flower was growing here. Even if someone guessed that there was a saint-grade spirit flower here, they wouldn't be able to find it. That demonic beast from the West Sea Dragon Palace is still at the northern frontier, but my attitude is still the same. If you want to trick it to help you pick the purgatory heart, then do it yourself. Lin Yuan rolled his eyes, but his tone was abnormally serious. Jiu Xian gently shook her head and said, I already said that the purgatory heart might be important to me, but it's not important to the point where I can't differentiate between priority and priority. Especially now in the Hungduan mountain range, Beast Lord Kirin is frantically purging his subordinates. Even I have to be on edge every day, afraid that my identity will be seen through by Beast Lord Kirin. If I were to take the purgatory heart now, what difference would it be from confessing without being pressed? At this point, Zhu Xian looked meaningfully at Lin Yuan and sneered. Otherwise, why do you think I allowed you to do whatever you want in the northern frontier? Lin Yuan was silent for a moment and did not respond. The speed of his growth was obvious to all. In less than a year and a half, if he had transformed into an ordinary monster beast, he might not even have been able to cross the threshold of cultivation. However, he had grown from an ordinary wild beast to a mountain lord monster beast. In terms of cultivation speed, even those legendary divine beast bloodlines were not much better than him. His relationship with Moxibustion Heart was indeed not that good. Moxibustion Heart had indeed taken a risk by allowing him to grow. Since it's not the usual stuff, why don't you get straight to the point? Lin Yuan took a deep look at Zhu Xian before speaking. In Legends, purgatory monster beasts should not have intelligence, but Zhu Xian was an exception. Even the purgatory monster beasts under Zhu Xian's command looked no different from ordinary monster beasts, but in reality, their intelligence was not even comparable to Spirit Awakening realm monster beasts. They were completely relying on Zhu Xian to suppress the ruthlessness in their hearts so that they would not show fear. However, according to the legend, only demonic beasts can degenerate into purgatory creatures. Lin Yuan also saw an exception with his own eyes, so he did not have too many doubts about Zhu Xian having spiritual wisdom. The only thing he cared about was that he could not understand what Zhu Xian was thinking at all. I plan to help you just like before. Moxibustion Heart poked his forked snake head out and opened his bloody mouth. His smile was unusually ferocious. I can help you become the Beast King of the Stoneclaw Forest. Naturally, I can also help you become an existence that can stand shoulder to shoulder with the three Beast Kings. Moreover, as far as I know, because you control the northern region and coexist peacefully with the humans, even the unfathomable Beast King Qilin thinks highly of you. He thinks that you can lead the Hungduan mountain range into a new era, and intends to make you the next Beast King. Therefore, I think that I can help you and make you the next Beast King as soon as possible. Oh. Lin Yuan glanced at Zhu Xian in surprise and sneered. This is different from the Lord in my impression. You supported me to become the Beast King of the Stoneclaw Forest in order to tie me firmly to the Stoneclaw Forest. When the heart of purgatory matures, it will be convenient for you to find me at any time. And it will also be convenient for you to place people around me. However, I don't think you have the ability to control a Beast King or the ability to control a Beast King. You don't seem to have any benefits by helping me become the next Beast King? Zhu Xian smiled and quickly answered Lin Yuan's question. There are no practical benefits, but you can't say that there are no benefits for me. You know my identity and don't feel disgusted. If we had just met before, you wouldn't have deliberately attacked me. However, Kirin is different. He has a morbid desire to control the Hungduan mountain range. If he knows my identity, there will be a bloody purge. That's why I feel that I will be safer if you become the next Beast King. Lin Yuan didn't feel any hostility towards purgatory creatures. As long as they didn't block his path, Lin Yuan didn't want to make unnecessary enemies for himself. Thus, he only had old grudges with Zhu Xian and no new enmity. To put it bluntly, I will help you. When you have a certain level of ability, you can help me in return. I won't say that you will make me an existence similar to the three Beast Kings after you become the Beast King. I only hope that you won't be ruthless towards me after you become the Beast King. I think you should consider it carefully. After all, the other candidates all have big clans behind them. It's standard for them to have a desolate demon realm presence. Even if they don't have a desolate demon realm presence, they still have a few mountain lords. As for you, your only advantage now is that you have a human force in your hands. However, in the Hungduan mountain range, the human forces can't easily interfere with your fight for the throne. Otherwise, it might cause negative effects. However, with my help, you can at least stand on the same starting line as those candidates from big clans. Jiu Xian sat up and smiled. I'm not forcing you. I just want to negotiate with you. If you don't think that I'm trustworthy, just pretend that I didn't come today. However, since I'm here today, there's no reason for me to come empty-handed. Let me give you a message. I'm all ears. Lin Yuan nodded slightly. The smile on Jiu Xian's face didn't change. She said in a deep voice, because of the benefits you created in the northern frontier, many beasts want to take your place. Even many clans have begun to take action, such as the Green Marsh clan. Chapter 376. Green Swamp Clan. A cold glint flashed in Lin Yuan's heterochromatic eyes. He and the Green Swamp Clan could be said to be old enemies. Because the flaming red crocodile king died in his hands, and the blood claw that came to deal with him was also dealt with, the hatred between Lin Yuan and the Green Swamp Clan was almost greater than the hatred between him and Jiu Xian. This was because the problem between him and Jiu Xian was nothing more than a matter of scheming and being schemed against, but it could be said that he had a blood feud with the Green Swamp Clan. I have only heard that the Green Swamp Clan has been in frequent contact with a human faction recently. Furthermore, it is convenient for them to mobilize the Fey beasts. The Green Swamp Clan seems to have the intention of increasing their troops to the Stoneclaw Forest. I reckon that even if they are forced by your influence in the northern frontier and cannot touch you, they will still wipe out the Stoneclaw clan, and the Fey beasts loyal to you near the Stoneclaw Forest, and completely cut off your path to becoming a beast king. At that time, no matter how much wealth you have in your hands, you will not be able to obtain Feys directly from the Hengduan mountain range. Whether you can obtain enough Feys will depend on the Green Swamp Clan. Even the price you have to pay in exchange for those Feys will be completely up to the Green Swamp Clan. Jiu Xian's voice was very calm, as if he was chatting with an irrelevant existence. Lin Yuan's thoughts were also spinning rapidly. Previously, the young lieutenant had said that the Ether Association was planning to replace Lin Yuan in the Fey monopoly business. Then, when he thought about how the Green Swamp Clan had been in frequent contact with the human factions recently, Lin Yuan naturally thought of these two opposing factions. They had already joined forces without him knowing, but the other party had not found a chance to make things difficult for him. After all, the entire northern frontier was under the control of Lin Yuan. The sects and forces were in a hurry to move southward. They had no energy to contact the demon beasts in the Hengduan mountain range. Now, instead of taking advantage of Lin Yuan's truce to escape, they still wanted to contact the demon beasts in the Hengduan mountain range to backstab Lin Yuan. Wasn't that just asking for too much? As for the aristocratic families, they might have this motive, but all the Feys they sold were purchased from the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce would issue an invoice every time they paid for the Feys. The amount of Feys and the types of Feys would be listed clearly. Wherever they went after leaving the northern frontier or entering the Hengduan mountain range, they would be strictly inspected by the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. Once the amount of goods didn't match, the faction behind the caravan would instantly be blacklisted by the Northern Territory Chamber of Commerce. They wouldn't give up their large profits to other aristocratic families, just for a little bit of profit. Therefore, only the Ether Society was in contact with the Verdant Marsh clan. Thank you, I understand. Lin Yuan reluctantly squeezed out a smile as he nodded at Jiu Xian. Jiu Xian yawned and lazily said, You have more schemes in your head than anyone else. Anyway, I have already made my intentions clear, and sent you the information. I believe you will have your own way to verify it. I don't have much to do during this period. If you want to contact me, just return to the Stoneclaw Forest. I will come and find you. Once again, Lin Yuan watched Jiu Xian leave. The coldness in his heterochromatic eyes almost solidified. It was as if it was going to freeze the scenery in front of him. 1 hour later, still in Lin Yuan's lair, Na Qin, Batu Wanyu, Bai Lu, Jinggang, and men, who had just returned, were all gathered together. Recently, the Verdant Marsh clan has been creating conflicts and sending reinforcements to the Stoneclaw Forest. Why didn't I hear you mention it? Lin Yuan went straight to the point. His gaze fell on his trusted subordinates in the Hengduan Mountains. Na Qin and Batu didn't say anything, but Mendu scratched his head and said in a deep voice, "Green Marsh Clan? I don't know about this. In the time that you were not here, the Stoneclaw Forest was much more peaceful. There were even beast kings coming every day to ask us when the next batch of goods will be sent to the Hengduan Mountains. They asked what good things the next batch would have, and if they could order more. As for the conflicts..." Speaking of this, he glanced at Na Qin and said in a low voice, "Na Qin did not report to me." Na Qin, who had felt that he had become a follower after returning from the Mendu city, casually said, "Lord Beast King, it's not like you don't know that our relationship with the Green Swamp clan has always been bad. The neighboring Beast Kings are mostly subordinates of the Green Swamp clan, and the friction between the two sides has always existed. Even if we deliberately suppress it, the demonic beasts below us will still have a small fight every 3 days and a big fight every 5 days. However, I really don't know about the Verdant Marsh clan sending reinforcements to the Stoneclaw Forest. In any case, I don't feel that there has been any change." When you did not speak. Her eyes flashed from time to time, as if she was thinking about something. Bai Lu shook his fur and said, "The Verdant Marsh clan sending reinforcements to the Stoneclaw Forest. I have heard of this matter, but I don't know if it is directed at you." "What do you mean by you don't know if it is directed at us?" Mendu was slightly startled and hurriedly asked. "Isn't the Scarlet Flame Swamp about to become the nest of the infernal demonic beasts? The black snake side is not a problem, but the demonic beasts on the other side have been penetrated by the infernal demonic beasts several times. In addition, Beast King Kirin has been purging the Hengduan mountain range of disloyal demonic beasts recently, so the higher-ups did not have time to deal with them. These infernal demonic beasts that rushed out have brought them quite a bit of trouble. Thus, when the Verdant Marsh clan sent reinforcements to the Stoneclaw Forest, it was under the banner of guarding against the infernal demonic beasts. Moreover, the demonic beasts they sent over did not move after entering the Stoneclaw Forest. Thus, I feel that they might really be here to help defend. It is also because the relationship between the two sides is not good that although my demonic beasts were keeping an eye on the Verdant Marsh clan's reinforcements, I didn't immediately tell you. I was worried that you would think that the other side was targeting you. It wouldn't be fun if a fight broke out." Bai Lu replied in a low voice, but his tone suddenly changed and he said, "However, the Black Snake has never spoken without thinking. Since it brought up this matter, then the Verdant Marsh clan's reinforcements must be hiding some unspeakable secret." "Sir Beast King, what do you say?" Mendu turned his head and looked at Lin Yuan. This was the basic respect for the Beast King. Even though Lin Yuan's focus was on the northern frontier and Mendu was in charge of all matters in the Stoneclaw Forest, when Lin Yuan was present, Mendu still chose to obediently shut his mouth and wait for Lin Yuan's orders. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.